I call the regular meeting of the Eugene School Board to order on Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022 at 7:04 p.m. Please join Superintendent Dye as he leads us in the flag salute. Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag, visible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there was a little bit of a Wi-Fi moment there, but I think that we did that. So I will now read the land acknowledgement. The Eugene School Board would like to acknowledge, hold on one second, please. Would like to acknowledge that our institution sits on the homelands of the Kalapuya people. In the treaties of 1851 and 1854 to 1855, and the subsequent forced removals of many Indian people from West Oregon, some of the Kalapuya were moved to the Grand Ronde Reservation, and some were moved to the Siletz Reservation. It is important to note that all of Lane County was and continues to be an important trading and gathering area for camas and other resources. During the Restoration era from 1977 to 1989, Lane County was designated as the service area for the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and the Siuslaw Indians, the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Indians, the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, the Coquel Indian Tribe, and the Cow Creek Band of the Umpqua Indians. Eugene School District 4J acknowledges that the descendants of original and service area inhabitants of this land are still here today. They are thriving members of our schools and our communities. Countless members of other tribes now also call our community and schools their home. We wish to thank those original stewards of this land. We as fellow stewards of this land wish to remember that we need to take good care of this land and take good care of all the members of our school district community. Now we move on to an agenda review. Are there any questions, changes, or corrections to the agenda anyone would like to request? If no, all right, the agenda stands as is. Next, we will have an introduction of guests in the superintendent's report. Superintendent Dye, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm going to turn off my camera because I'm in a place where internet signal is rather tenuous, and so hopefully that will allow me to get through my comments. Still able to hear me, Maya?
Yes.
Great. Good evening, Chair Rabassa, members of the board, and our members of our community. At our last meeting, I shared an update to one of the 3 focus areas guiding our work for the year. Namely our progress towards meaningful engagement in our decision-making process. Tonight, I'd like to provide updates around our work to support equitable outcomes for all students. I'm really excited to see our plans for a neurodivergent student affinity group taking place. We've hired a coordinator and are standing up affinity groups in our high schools with partner agencies. Since the start of the school year, we've received concerns requesting assistance in our buildings, particularly at our elementary and middle schools. Throughout the past week, district teams have met to strategize ways to help facilitate strengthening and reestablishing systems that will provide needed support for our students and our staff after 2 really difficult years where those systems were challenged in many, many ways. We've heard loud and clear that especially at our primary grades, our students and staff are feeling overwhelmed, resulting in elevated behavioral challenges, ultimately hindering our learning. To accommodate this work, we have shared with our staff that we will be temporarily shifting our focus to utilize our expert staff who are coaches and mentors, teachers on special assignment, to provide additional adults in buildings, along with establishing teams led by our student service specialists to provide just-in-time support to buildings experiencing exceptionally high needs. We know that this comes with trade-offs, and when we're asking people to shift their focus away from what remains to be very important work. However, it is critical that we come together to prioritize removing the barriers that stand in the way of the important teaching and learning for the remainder of the school year. are not suggesting that our temporary shift is through the remainder of the school year, but we want to get to this meaningful work as soon as we possibly can. To ensure that we don't lose momentum on the important work these key colleagues accomplished, we've simultaneously launched a platform that enables an anonymous place to share their thoughts as we problem solve together about how to meet the needs of our schools and our staff and our students. This same collaborative tool will be implemented to support the work of our scheduling team, who is tasked with reviewing our secondary schedule to provide impacted students and families with an opportunity to share their needs. Additionally, our equity, inclusion, and instruction team has been busy facilitating the student-led No Place for Hate program, in which more than 500 secondary students across our systems have been trained to create a culture of belonging in their schools. This program empowers students to work with their administrators to identify ways that they can work together to create welcoming, inclusive school environments. Finally, I'd like to extend an invitation to the board and anyone in the listening audience interested to attend the Dia de los Muertos event this Friday from 6 to 8:30 p.m. at North Eugene High School. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you, Superintendent Dye. Next is items raised by the audience. The school board receives written comments by email at board@4j.lane.edu and sets aside time in each regular board meeting to hear public comment. Community members can sign up to speak to the board by submitting their request online at 4j.lane.edu/board/public comment or contact the superintendent's office. The deadline is the Monday before each meeting. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and cannot give their time to another speaker. A timekeeper will show a sign when the speaker has 30 seconds left and when their time is up. Speakers may offer objective comments or criticism about district operations and programs. For complaints about individuals, the district has a board policy and complaint process. Please contact the superintendent's office at 541-790-7707 for more information about submitting a formal complaint. Tonight, we have 3 speakers who have signed up to speak, and Debbie will be inviting you all in.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our 3 speakers tonight are first up, Jenny Kennedy, followed by Erica Thesson, and our last speaker will be Larry Lewin. So Jenny, when you're on and ready, you can go ahead and start speaking.
Can anybody hear?
No, we can't
Jenny,
hear
you're
you.
on mute.
Hold on a second. She doesn't show as being on mute. Debbie, maybe Jenny, if you want to log out and then log back in, and we can move on to the next one and add you further down the queue.
Next one.
Okay, thank you.
So next, we'll try Erica Thesson.
Hi, thank you. My name is Erica Thesson. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a parent of 1 current and 2 former students in the district. I'm speaking tonight about improving involvement of disabled and neurodivergent students in the plans for school activities and climate. I have 2 students who are neurodivergent. One recently attended his high school homecoming dance. He was really excited about going to participate in rite of passage and a teen tradition. But not long after arrival, he was extremely overstimulated by the sounds, music, lights, noise, crowds, and ended up having a shutdown. He sought a quieter place and found some other students in the same boat. A teacher was kind enough that evening to find them all a temporary space to decompress. But overall, he had a very difficult evening, which was not really enjoyable for himself or his partner. According to the CDC in 2022, 1 in 44 children in the US is autistic. In the 2019-2020 school year in Oregon, over 80,000 or 13.8% of the K-12 students were disabled students. But I am not aware of any, until this evening, disabled or neurodivergent student unions here in 4J. I also doubt that these students are involved in the planning of school activities. I just want to note I'm not bashing the students who plan these events. For example, a high school dance with a few lower stimulation, quieter spaces with soft chairs or fidgets for neurodivergent students who are really easily sensory overwhelmed would be helpful, but also making sure that events have taken into consideration things like ASL interpreters, ways to accommodate visually impaired students, or checking overall accessibility is key. One important way to achieve this is encouragement of formation of disabled and neurodivergent student unions. Thank you, Superintendent Dye. While I am able-bodied and neurotypical, I will say that disability is not a bad word. Part of how we empower young people and improve awareness of disabilities and autism is by centering the experiences of these very students. I know in past conversations in 4J, I've kind of heard some questioning if students will even want to self-identify to join such groups. Asking that question is inherently ableist, full stop. We improve the outcomes of all students and decrease ableism by encouraging disabled and autistic joy and pride. Please help improve the lives of our disabled and neurodivergent youth by coming up with more ways to involve them and their school experiences and school activities and planning. Lastly, I have concerns over some of the public comments in these meetings. Freedom of speech is a core of our representative democracy, but I recently have heard here dangerous dog whistles to racism, transphobia, homophobia, anti-Semitism, and ableism being broadcast during public comment. I know you have to be accessible to the public, but overall, this intolerance can and does harm the very students we are trying to best serve. There are many of us in the community that want this to stop and would like to reduce this harm. So I appreciate your time, and I'm really glad to hear that we're getting some neurodivergent student unions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Thyssen, excuse me. We will go to Larry Lewin next, and then after Mr. Lewin, we will try Jenny Kennedy again.
I'm Larry Lewin, retired 4J teacher, now a member of CAPE. Thank you, school board members and Superintendent Andy, for this opportunity to speak to you and to our public. In Sunday's Register Guard front page article, A Breaking Point, Oregon schools struggle with support staff shortages, the reporters write that 4J has added teachers and educational assistants in the 2018-19 and last school years, helping to reduce class size. Excellent. We are now at 1,193 certified educators and 1,021 classified staff, both obviously critical to our success. The article goes on to ask a question: how long these employees stay and how experienced there are, however, is another question. Right, so I will ask it. What is the average number of years our teachers work in 4J? Same question for our principals, educational assistants, secretaries, bus drivers, and how does our district keep track of this data? What are some of the reasons our employees leave? What is 4J doing this year to prevent another wave of resignation and early retirements? I know that those who quit 4J are invited to take an anonymous online survey to explain their departure, but what percent actually do? Instead, does 4J's Human Research Department invite them to attend an exit interview to discuss in more detail the reasons they are leaving us? This data would be invaluable in determining their work experiences here and to help us stem the turnover. Professionalism in any given field is not a given. It is earned through experience, reflection, and focused improvement. The continued loss of seasoned professionals has an impact every day for our students. The foolish notion, for example, that anyone can teach a class has no connection to reality. It takes years to become a professional who knows the ins and outs of a school bus, a cafeteria, a school's front office, a classroom. Public education is threatened like never before. More than 20 years of standardized teaching and learning, over-testing, top-down decision-making has damaged our ability to be a nationally known, innovative leader that we once were. Adding to this descent, the pandemic wreaked havoc. Student behavior remains a major concern in our classrooms again this year. I've made this plea to previous 4J school boards and previous superintendents. I will make it again tonight. We here in Eugene have the ability to reverse this downward trend and become again a district of motivated, energized, and proud education workers who make schools dynamic, interesting, and fun for our students and earn the praise and respect of their parents and our community. Saving public education will come down to our frontline educators. Listen to what they need to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewin. Jenny Kennedy, I think you're with us now, so if you're all hooked up.
Can you hear me now? All right, thank you for accommodating my challenge. And thank you for listening to me here tonight, board and Superintendent Dye. Children do well when they can. Teachers do the best that they can. When conventional wisdom doesn't work, we need to stop focusing on behavior and start talking about triggers. I think we can all agree that challenging behaviors are problems to be solved, but are we looking deep enough into the why behind these behaviors? It's imperative that we hold an empathetic stance when we are talking about struggling children. All too often, I see these children and their families being blamed and shamed by an educational system that fails to adequately support their complex needs. I don't think this is intentional, but I do think we need to be very intentional about how we address this issue. It is easy to talk about the effects these behaviors have on teachers and other students, but it doesn't seem like many people are asking the kids behind the room clears what that experience is like for them. Each time a chair gets thrown, a struggling child loses another little piece of their self-esteem. Relationship is the most important aspect to helping people change. Teachers do not have the ability to form trusting and safe relationships with every student in a classroom of 30. 4J is having a major staffing issue. The result of this crisis is often the suspension and or push out of some of our most vulnerable students. These children are being punished for needing extra support. We see it happen in special education all the time. I am a member of a local parent support group of 1,000 parents, all of children on 504s and IEPs. These students are overrepresented in the discipline and behavior data, and they are much more likely to be chronically absent due to an inability to tolerate an environment that has inadvertently set them up to fail. But the staffing issue is not the only problem. While many are pointing at students experiencing behavior challenges as the issue, I am here to tell you that school feels unwelcoming and unsafe for many of these children. Many are reacting to their environment. When a child is acting out in class to avoid being the last one done with their timed reading assignment, let's look at how the district refused to identify their dyslexia before we label this child as a behavior problem. Behavior data does not tell this child's story, and behavior interventions will not fix their problem. It's traumatizing. When a neurodivergent student has a meltdown because they are being teased for wearing noise-canceling headphones, a behavior support plan will not help that. It will cause harm. Students often need co-regulation before they can learn to regulate themselves. They need to be understood and appropriately supported. This is a lack of skill, not a lack of will. Believe me when I say that these are very strong-willed children, and where there is a will, there is a way. I have many years of experience in supporting students who struggle with behavior challenges, and I've seen a lot of withholding of preferred activities, withholding emotional warmth and approval, withholding of recess, whatever, in an attempt to break the child's will and sense of self until they comply. I also see behavior support plans that include attempts to bribe children into tolerating painful environments. It's so damaging. What lesson does it teach? Behavior is an indication. The behavior intervention models in place are not working for the kids who need the most support. That much is obvious. Behavior is communication. If we want to make our schools safe, we must start by listening to our children. Let's look at training staff on co-regulation skills and collaborative problem solving. Let's shift our lens to relational health. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Larry, and thank you, Erica. Next on our agenda, we have comments by employee groups. It's my understanding we are not receiving any comments tonight. That moves us on to comments and committee reports by individual board members. Alicia, I see you waving your hand.
Thanks, Maya. Appreciate it. Haven't gone first for a while, so I thought I'd give it a shot. Thanks. First, Erica, thank you, and all the speakers, thank you. I was just appreciating what you were talking about student unions and building those next disability rights advocates. I was recently at a meeting, people who do disability work, and I was the youngest. So it's a little scary. We got to replenish our folks out there doing disability work in this community. Also had a wonderful time at the Edison grand opening. It was so amazing, a nice speech, Maya, and Andy. But it was and way to hold the cord to the thing. That was excellent. It was so much fun. It was so much fun to hear the students sing and to see the people there celebrating. It was great. We saw pictures of people who actually attended when Edison first opened or close to it. I had a chance to talk to teachers who had been there years ago. Just a great opportunity. And I just want to take this chance and thank the voters, because those voters made that possible for us. Going out and deciding to put something on the ballot is one of the hardest things you do as a school board member. You're gauging what your community will accept. You're making the plans about the best use of our limited resources and asking people to support that. And that process was incredible. We had so many community meetings. We had opportunity to speak to so many people and to come up with a package that was a lot to ask of our voters, and they came through for us. And I think it was the groundwork that we laid going into it. So I know Judy and I were there, but I also want to thank the other board members that were there making that happen. Evangelina Sungren, Mary Walston, Anne-Marie Levis, Jim Torrey, and Eileen Nittler were all part of the school board making that happen. And I think a commitment to that you have done the right thing is when your school board members who have left the board no longer attend these meetings come back and help you out. So Craig Smith, Jennifer Geller, they were there for us in our PAC work, and they gave of their time and their treasure. And of course, lots of people helped, people from the North region and people from Kamloops, but those folks from Edison that I just want to call out are, well, Joy Marshall. Thank you, Joy. You're a rock star in our community. Kelly Colvin Smith and Craig Mimi Cato, Kari Parsons, Kier Wilson, and thank you for all that you did. I know you knocked on a lot of doors, and it was fun to see some of you there at the event. Moving on, I want to thank Andy for posting in his Friday memo the answers to the questions I asked about the new hires. A couple things that I asked that I didn't see, and maybe I missed it, but how many of the positions are new? Like I know Carrie Dell's position was split into two. Am I reading that right? So we have her old position we hired for, and then we have a new position. So like I said, I thought that we saw 3 new positions, but I wasn't sure. And the other thing I wasn't quite clear on is I asked you how many were appointed and how many went through a competitive process. And I couldn't really tell from the list, because you did, I appreciate that you gave me the names of who went through competitive process and who was appointed, but I couldn't see how that decision was made. I thought maybe I would be able to, like, if they were internal people, it was easier to appoint them, but I didn't see, because you also went on competitive process for some people that were internal. So if you wouldn't mind at the next Friday memo, just clearing that up. Those were questions I asked last time, but you did a lot of what I asked, but those are just the 2 things that I'm curious about that didn't get asked. So thank you. I'm really looking forward, like I'm sure everybody else is, to celebrating Kamloops and North Eugene's opening. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia. Judy?
First of all, I just want to say, follow up with comments I've said before, but the first annual district-wide fun run sponsored by EEF did happen since we last met. And I've mentioned it in my previous comments, but there was an amazing turnout. So thank you to all the families and schools and teachers who showed up. The sun was out. People were in great spirits and ready to move and socialize and just to be there and have a good time. Kudos to the organizers of this event. It seemed to come off without a glitch, even though it was the first one. We had Mayor Venice started both the runs, and she was joined by a dinosaur who actually ended up being Melissa Ibarra from our very staff. Could not recognize her in her full dinosaur suit, but was very fun. Some schools entered teams and took advantage of the opportunity to raise funds for their school. Next year, we hope to have more schools participate. It's really an easier way to fundraise because the logistics are done by EEF, the organizing and advertising, and you get a chance to fundraise for your school, but it also benefits all schools. So, because a percentage is then taken and distributed to schools that don't have the same capacity to fundraise. So last week, as Alicia said, I also attended the grand opening of the new Edison School and was really a celebration. I'm grateful for the generosity of our community as well. And it's the voters and taxpayers thank you for supporting our Eugene Public Schools. You do a lot. I mean, our taxpayers and voters have really supported our bonds and our levies, and we really appreciate it. But hundreds of people did show up at this opening, whether there were former students, parents, teachers, administrators, and one woman, I think Alicia alluded to her, but I actually met her. She was in the first class from 1926, attended Edison, and she was pretty excited about the new school. There were current students, parents and staff, and former and current board members and neighbors and friends. And the building is really a wonderful learning space, and it's a thrill to see its functioning. I just want to thank one other group of people that we haven't talked, and that's our construction and facilities crews who worked on this so diligently to get us to this point. We actually opened on time with kids, and that's pretty amazing in these very challenging times for supply challenges and work shortages. Last, I do want to bring up a topic. First, I want to thank Erica and the superintendent for thinking about including voices of neurodivergent students. I think we really need that. I'm really appreciating that people are bringing that up, and also the comments about some of our needs of our students, you know, looking at triggers, looking at responses to behavior as lack of skills rather than just trying to act out. So I know we're working hard on some of those strategies. But the topic I wanted to just touch on today that I've been thinking about a lot lately is that we all really want our students to feel safe and connected and to be able to learn and thrive at school. I know we've been implementing many ways that we can ensure that this happens. But there's one critically important component that contributes, I think, to a large degree to achieving this vision, and it's often overlooked or marginalized. What I'm referring to is the students' parents and their engagement and involvement in their students in their child's school experience. Parent and family engagement in their child's education creates an overall environment of support that enables students to feel cared for and valued at school. Family involvement increases the likelihood that students will attend, they'll improve their grades or graduate and have viable post-graduation plans such as college or a good paying job or trade. I'm really hoping to explore ways with our district staff and fellow board members that we can promote and support parents and family engagement and involvement in their students' educational experience, and that we commit to making this happen for all families. And last but far from least, I want to remind people to vote. We need to elect great leaders who value our democratic governance and providing a free, high quality public education to all children. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Kirthi?
I don't have many remarks today. I just wanted to say everything everyone said on the neurodivergence and the affinity groups and anything we can do to support that, I think is extremely important. I think compounded by the pandemic and all the stressors even leading up to that have just been, I think we're taking an additional look at that, but all of that needed to be looked at even prior to that, and looking at putting children in classrooms and not make them feel like they're being othered in ways that lead them to be disengaged from their learning experiences and from exclusion with other students, I think is extremely important in looking at ways we can do that. Having said that, I did want to say that I can't believe it's November already. I feel like the school year has been an extremely like on fast forward. And I'm sure that as a mother of young children, I'm feeling that, and I'm sure our teachers are feeling that tenfold with dealing with their own families and their own students with that. So I did want to say thank you to EEA and with Superintendent Dye for looking at that situation with the lack of supports in the classrooms and looking at ways that they can actually fill some of those gaps and add some supports in there, even if it is a temporary basis, but looking at ways we can actually fill some of those moving forward in a way that isn't just a stopgap effort on how can we actually build some of that scaffolding and support moving forward. On there. I did want to say my fourth grader went on our first field trip today. It was the first kind of normal event that happened after a few years of being in the pandemic. It was parent volunteers are there. There's a huge infold of people who are wanting to volunteer back in the schools. I know Superintendent Dye is working on looking at that backfill and how we can go through and expedite the process of getting these parents through the system and their security checks, but it's been really heartwarming to see the number of parents who are looking at coming back and being in their parents' classrooms. I went through curriculum night last week, and every classroom had a volunteer section and form filled out, and people were just rushing to be able to just support their children in that, and it was just really heartwarming to see. I didn't want to say happy Halloween, and I'm sure everyone's been seeing the reports on EPD in the friendly neighborhood of actual harmful objects put into children's candy. And I find it's ridiculous that like we've been taking this urban myth and someone's actually going in our community and doing active harm to our children with putting in razor blades. I think it's absolutely abhorrent. I applaud the EPD for looking into what that situation looked like. I want to all sympathies with the parents of the children who are there. Please do be forewarned and take a look at the candy that is out there. I think it's a terrible thing that's happened to take a joy out of the smallest little things that we're actually able to actually take part in this dire strait of our world, so it seems sometimes. So my sympathies and empathies with all of your children out there, and I'm hoping that the rest of the month is a much lighter place for B, and that we are actually starting to build some of the supports with our community and looking at a much more, I guess, I don't even know the word I'm looking for anymore. Like, I like the words of affinity, but I like to be able to develop that affinity across like multiple groups and not just within their individual sectors as well too. So I'm hoping that's where we move forward with. Thanks.
Laurel?
So I have a few announcements. I'll start out with I am on the board for LCOG, for Lane County Council of Governments, that run so many things that would break down if we didn't have them. So one of the things they have been asking for, and they need very badly, are volunteers for their Meals on Wheels program. Thank you, Maya, for putting that out on your Facebook. And anybody else that could share that if you partake in social media or other ways. It'd be great to get that information out to people because they feed a lot of seniors. And it is all, and they also do welfare checks and care checks at the same time when they're delivering meals. So this program is very important. So I also want to say I'm gratified for Maya and Andy when I asked if this is something that schools could participate in, since we have so many students that do need volunteer hours. And they're looking and they pass this on to administrators for them to see if we have students that can be part of this. Probably not delivering meals and doing welfare checks, but they need dishwashers. They need people helping to make food. There's a lot that goes into this program besides just delivering meals. So that's it, what I have from LCOG. I want to say, though it's not been ratified yet, I am very excited about OSEA and the fact that we've come to, I'd like to say, historic place, and we will have a base wage of $18 at 4J. And that is exciting, because that doesn't just mean 4J. That means, I believe, the whole state. I may be feeling really grand about it, but what happens when somebody is creating a living wage, other places have to follow suit, and it builds and goes out from there. So this is not just school districts. We have people that do turf and grounds. The city has people that do turf and grounds. The county has people that do turf and grounds. We have made a major change that eventually I think will affect a lot of people's ability to live in our area. And I just thank the board for doing this work and not thinking I'm crazy when I came on this board asking for this a long time ago. You all are awesome. So the other thing I'd like to talk about is that we have a board that I keep on hearing here and there, and people like to say that we should get along, we should do all these things. And the reality is we don't have to all get along. We have to do our job well. We have to make things happen. We have to come together, show up for our work, and then make decisions. We don't have to be buddies. That is some ideal that somebody somewhere made up. What we do need to do is have these, to keep doing the work we're doing, because we have done a lot and we're still doing a lot. And we've done it while we've had to help get on board new board members. And we've done it while, people have onboarded us. All these things have been happening, but we have a strong board and we're doing the work. And no, not everybody has to get along and do things perfectly, but we do need to keep on showing up and doing the work and focusing on what needs to be done in our district. And so for that, I ask that we work to complete our board goals. It's November, and I would really like to get those finished. So that's what I asked for. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to add. I didn't have a very full week last week of meetings and such, but I did have the opportunity to chat with some of my fellow board members, and it is great to see that we are in alignment on many, many things. And I don't want to be repetitive. I am appreciative of the neurodivergent affinity group. I'm really looking forward to hearing from very valuable voices that are sometimes quiet. Yeah, I have neurodivergent family members and lots of friends, and they all have very important things to say. And I also attended the opening of Edison, and it was great to hear from Alicia and Judy some of the backstory. Not knowing a lot of it, it was still a wonderful experience. The building is beautiful. It was evident that a lot of thought and care was invested, along with community support. so many of the people I saw there, their kids don't go there anymore. Maybe they went there before, and they're not directly affiliated with the school anymore. It's just that there's a history there and there's a community. And as Judy had mentioned, it really was a celebration. And the building is alive and up and running, and as everyone else is, looking forward to the other new buildings, and also, all the other school buildings. I haven't seen them all, and they each have their own presence and their own cultures, and we need to pay attention to all of the buildings because it's always exciting to have something shiny and new, but we do need to invest our time in buildings that need some help. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Gordon.
Thanks. I want to first thank Larry Lewin for pointing out the importance of us doing exit interviews with staff who choose to leave. That's something we've talked about for a long time, haven't done. I know we've been busy with a million different things, and I understand why it hasn't happened, but I appreciate the reminder of the importance of doing that as a fundamental thing towards being able to make sure we're able to retain good staff. November is Transgender Awareness Month, and I just want to take this opportunity to say how much I appreciate the trans staff and students who help make up our community, and everyone in the school system who's working to ensure that all of us are equally welcomed when we walk into a 4J school building. Continuing with all things queer, I was happy to be able to attend the Drag Queen Storytime event last week that was mentioned at our last board meeting and was threatened by armed protesters. Was glad to see that there were in fact very few armed people even among the protesters, and a very large turnout by members of our community to protect the right of those who want to dress up and tell stories and those who want to watch and listen to them do so in peace and security. I'm appreciative of the letter from Superintendent Dye and EEA President Sabrina Gordon that other people have talked about the decision to temporarily move staff from the downtown district building into schools in order to try to address the problem of behavior disruptions. I know that this is something that has been exacerbated by COVID, but that was also a serious problem before that. I'm not sure what the exact answer is, and I very much appreciate Jenny Canada's comments about needing to look at this in a holistic way and not just as through behavior modification. But I hope that when we get to the discussion later in the year about how to spend our Student Success Act dollars, we can look seriously at the possibility of devoting a significant portion of those funds to solving this issue on a permanent basis. The last thing, as Laurel O'Rourke said, I know that the contract terms will come to us at our next meeting, but I'm thrilled to hear that the OSEA reached a tentative agreement for classified employees. I want to thank the OSEA members and bargaining team, Kathy Tagworker, June Blackwell, Corey Rusko, Mary Beth Hep-Illam, Lisa Jenkins Easton, and President Sheila Wagner. And I also want to thank Superintendent Dye, Chief of Staff Rob Hess, HR Director Karen Harden, and all of the board colleagues who supported this, and especially two people, Laurel O'Rourke for her early, strong, and consistent advocacy for the importance of having an $18 minimum wage and not having employees living in poverty, and Myra Basso for her leadership as chair in getting the board to do our part in making this a reality. I have heard secondhand that there are some other employers in the area who are angry or worried that this contract might force them to raise their own wages or to see their employees leave because more people will come to work in 4J. I hope those fears become true, and I appreciate the work of everyone who's contributed to creating that situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. I want to say thank you to our community members for your moving words, advocating for the inclusion of voice of educators regarding their experiences, of the voice of disabled students in planning events and decision-making in general, and of the voice of students and families in a re-examination of how we address our relational health approaches. And speaking of Edison, the only other groups that deserve our gratitude regarding the new Edison building are our staff who packed up the school not once, but twice, which is a huge endeavor 2 times over. The families who trekked their students to school in another neighborhood for 2 years. And last but not least, the neighbors who lived in a construction zone for 2 years. So in addition to the many folks mentioned before me who are incredibly deserving of our appreciation, I would like to extend my thanks to these other community members as well. From the Student Voice Committee, I'm excited to report that I was just informed that over 30 students have applied to serve as student board representatives. Regional equity managers and school staff will forward names to the board, and after onboarding, we will match student boards to board member partners with the plan to officially welcome our student reps at our November 16th board meeting. And another good news, as many of you heard, including in Gordon and Laurel's statements, 4J and our classified staff union, OSEA, have reached a contract agreement pending formal finalization. As Laurel noted, OSEA President Sheila Wagner called this agreement historic, and it has created a buzz all over, as Gordon just mentioned. I'm so proud of our bargaining teams for negotiating a truly impactful contract, increasing our base wage to $18 an hour, along with notable cost of living increases and several other important components. I'm so proud to serve and belong to a community and school district that has made what many are referring to as a monumental move, demonstrating our values through action. Tonight, I am excited to continue spotlighting 4J staff and formally welcome a newer addition to the 4J family. Though CJ Way has only been in the district since September 28th, in that short time, she has jumped into her role with enthusiasm. CJ is 4J's newest department secretary, serving both the superintendent's office as well as the communications department. If you visit the district offices, CJ can be found behind the desk in the lobby wearing her now iconic teal glasses. Without fail, she will greet you with a warm smile and help you sign in, find your way, or connect you with the person you are there to meet. If you happen to visit the district offices a second time, she is likely to know your name and will display an eagerness at making sure you know how happy she is to see you return. CJ is a science teacher by trade and truly understands our district's work focus. This expert understanding of the world of education is a tremendous asset as she can directly relate to the daily happenings of a school district. In her role, she is not only the one greeting visitors and answering the phone, she is the one who is asked, and I quote, to do all of the things that need to be done. She is known by her colleagues as, and I quote again, smart, engaging, thoughtful, and hardworking. It is such a pleasure to work with CJ, and I find myself smiling as I walk into the district office, and I know I'm not the only one. Next time you have business to take care of in the district office, I encourage you to extend a welcome to CJ so she can be made well aware of how much we appreciate her and her work. Thank you, CJ, for being such an important part of the heart of 4J. And that completes our comments by board members, and we move on to the consent group items for action. There are 5 items on the consent agenda tonight. Is there a motion? I see Gordon. Gordon, you want to make the motion?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Judy, thank you. Approval of the consent agenda is moved by Gordon Lafer and seconded by Judy Newman. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. I'm seeing 6 hands raised. All those opposed, same sign. Laurel, do you want to vote one way or the other? Okay.
What did you say? I missed it.
We were just voting on the consent agenda. Do you vote aye? In favor of the motion? Okay, the motion passes unanimously with yes votes from Gordon Lafer, Maya Rabasa, Michelle Shu, Judy Newman, Laurel O'Rourke, Alicia Hayes, and Kirthi Hasija Kaufman. Next on the agenda, we have items for information. Up next, we will be discussing legislative priorities, and I pass it off to Judy Newman and Kirti Hasicha-Kaufman.
Great, thank you. I'm going to lead us off. This is something Kirti and I have worked on together. We're a small but mighty committee. And first of all, I want to thank my fellow board members for getting in your priorities. I've heard from almost everyone. And so what you're going to see tonight, I'm going to share my screen because we just finished compiling those today. And we will definitely upload this in board books so others can see it. But if I share my screen, those watching can also follow along. So let me do that first and tell you what you're looking at. Just to remind my fellow board members and the listening audience that we asked board members to send in their 3 priorities for this legislative session. In addition, they didn't have to use full funding as one of their 3 priorities, because our assumption is that is something we all will be focused on, and that's important for us to look at. So what you're going to see on here is the first 2 I put in bold are to really pay attention to our basic school support funds that come in, to be sure that they actually reflect actual roll-up costs, which is meaning cost of living increases, so that we can keep pace with wages and what needs to happen in our community to purchase materials and just to function. And then the second funding one is to ensure that we get continued full funding for the Student Success Act. So now we're getting into, I'd like to have people's comments after I tell you what's here. So the first item was recruit and retain a diverse and qualified workforce. And there was also one item that said to help address pay issues, and that came, so both of these together, our recommendation is to put these into one priority area for us. And you can see the initials of the board members who suggested this. So we had quite a few people bring that up in their top priorities, and it was a previous priority, which I noted on here. Ensuring all existing and new mandates include funding for implementation. And we had someone identify this. This was a previous priority. It has sometimes been the practice of the legislature to pass legislation that gives a mandate to schools and doesn't always include the funding or the support we need to implement that. And I think the classic that we've heard many times has been about the PE time, which we all supported, thought was a great idea, but most districts didn't have the facilities or ability to implement that without additional funds. And then the next 2, I'd like to have us look together because I think they could actually go together. To eliminate section 3 of an ORS that prohibits the compensation for school board members and creates, and by doing this, it can create insurmountable barrier for too many people to serve directly. It's a big time commitment, and it's especially challenging for people with families and full-time work. So there was a feeling to try to eliminate that barrier, to provide some options for either paying board members, which is the second one, or providing stipends or other things that could help make it possible for board members from all different kinds of backgrounds and stages in life to participate.
Yeah, I think we're one of 2 states, right, in the union that don't have some sort of a compensation, whether it's a stipend or a thing. And that's been an issue around, like, even just little things like childcare, or having this people available to, and obviously reinforcing who is able to join, and what parts of your community. So it's just increasing disparities of the representation overall. So I see it definitely as an equity issue. I don't have particularly like, for me, when I put my things on here, I didn't necessarily have a particularly strong opinion on whether that's a stipend or compensation. I think if it is, obviously, like if it's compensation, it definitely makes, opens up the room for a lot more communities to be able to join and have that on there. So, I mean, I think that is that's a conversation, but in either case, I think it needs to be addressed one way or the other for.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. So I guess I want to also remind our board members that we're not introducing legislation or suggesting this, that these are sort of our priorities, that when legislation's introduced, we know the issues that we really want to weigh in on and support as a board. So leaving it like this, we can see what comes up.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is to work with our local districts with ODE and our legislative partners on long-term solutions that will reduce standardized testing requirements. And again, quite a few board members had that on their list, and it was also a previous priority. The next one is to align early learning and K-12 systems with support of comprehensive community services and supports and with public funding. And I know that was one I had put, and I was going to point out that we had 2 board members also put up the priority of providing universal high quality preschool. And my suggestion is that we track these together. I know at this point in time, there's not a conversation at the legislature yet about universal preschool. They're working hard to expand preschool promise and Head Start slots, which are income based, but they keep working towards this bigger concept of universal high quality preschool. And I also am aware there's going to be some local conversation and effort like Multnomah County did for passing a measure to do universal high quality preschool. So it's something we might want to keep an eye on in both arenas. And then we had training for school board members, onboarding of new members to give them the tools for success. And the second thing is the annual self-assessment for school boards and training to address needs and priorities identified by school board members. No one identified this, but I do know there is going to be some kind of legislation. I know this from the legislative committee of OSBA, and probably introduced by legislators. And I don't know what form it will take, but I would like our board to discuss what we would like, if anything, to happen around this. Support for CTE and workforce initiatives and funding. Again, 2 board members identified that, and that probably won't come through the Oregon Department of Ed budget, but it might come through other ways at this point.
It could also come from like the Department of Labor. There's things on here. So if we're looking at a state like larger legislative priorities, there are other departments that will look at apprenticeships and, you know, directions of community colleges and connections through with high schools and whatnot. So I think there's, you know, looking at who in our state legislator may be able to connect with these priorities.
Absolutely. You know, if there's something that a bill or a funding bill that we could definitely testify, submit a letter, and how it supports our work in K-12. Thank you. We have expand and deepen the All Students Belong work, and that was a previous priority. And we had a couple of board members also identify, expand and support mental health and social emotional supports for students and staff. And again, those could potentially be together. I don't know if there are going to be bills or conversation around this yet at this session. And the last one was to support environmental and climate change initiatives in education, in school facilities, transportation, and in practices, and in curriculum for students. This has been a previous priority of ours. And I think we all got an email and a heads up. I think there will be some bills this term about possibly environmental curriculum. And it's something we should talk about whether we would like to support or see if it does come out. So I'm going to stop here. I have one and open it up for questions. Do you want me to leave this up, by the way? And Kirthi and I could answer questions. Maya, would you like me to leave this up or just take it off so we can see each other?
I think leaving it up for now is good. If people can't see each other, they can switch their view to side-by-side gallery, and then they should be able to see both things. But I do see Laurel has her hand raised.
Great.
So my question, you said we're not bringing any of this forward. We're just kind of like in the background. Is this OSBA is the only entity that gets to bring things forward? Is that correct?
No, no. Any legislature can offer up legislation. We haven't, as a board, done that before. I think that legislative concepts are already turning in, and we could have a conversation as a board going forward if that's something we would want to work with legislators on, for sure. But it's just not something as a board we've undertaken before, Laurel. It starts really early, and we can work through an organization, but usually it's a legislator that might want to bring it forward.
Laurel, to answer that too, I had in our first legislative committee meeting and also asked that question on those. And I think part of one of the research topics was year two, which is what would it take for us to be a board that takes a more active role in bringing forth legislation and bringing forth a more active priority. Because I think there's a two view, I would like to take a more active role in actually putting forth things that are a priority for us and seeing if there are ways that we can actually hear and put those. So some of the research that we're talking about doing this is what are those active steps that we need to get in place, and what are the roles that other boards play, and how are they in actually setting up in a ways to be able to influence and put forth things. So I don't want to just say that we're not going to. So I'm what that looks like.
Well, I was hoping, I thought we were getting together to pick our priorities, and then that would be what we sent to the legislators.
Well,
That's what I thought we were doing.
So that is what we're looking at. I think today is just a exercise of getting all of our things on here. I think we're going to look at categorizing this, and then in prep for our legislative breakfast in January, putting these out, these are our priorities on here, see what is, which one of our legislators, what's coming up in session, what is happening in the current session and the next session that these can be tied to. And then if these aren't being tied to, what needs to happen for us to make these priorities a priority for them as well.
But you were definitely under the right impression, Laurel. These will be shared with our legislators, and we will have that conversation.
Okay, thanks.
Very definitely. Gordon?
Thanks. I appreciate this list. One thing, and I apologize for not having responded earlier to your emails. One additional thing that I'd be interested in seeing, and I don't know if the legislature is going to deal with this, is having a definition of instructional minutes that includes all the things that we in 4J actually think are educational, which might include affinity group meetings or other kinds of activities. I mean, especially when we're talking about social and emotional learning and the importance of engagement. Just if there's something that would make it easier for us to, in fact, give the amount of time and attention we think those things deserve by having a clear definition of instructional minutes, that would be good. But mostly, I just wanted to ask, and this is probably obvious or the plan anyway, that I know there's a zillion ideas, and then by February or something, you get a clear idea of what are the major bills that have been introduced and that have a chance of actually going someplace. And so if there, maybe this is already the plan, but if the two of you can come back to us at whatever that right point is. And I mean, I'm happy for us to communicate our own ideas to legislators, but we're, obviously we're too small to make something happen unless we're working with other people. And so I would like to know the other big things that are being promoted by OSBA, also by OEA or OSEA or anybody. Just here's something that has a chance of moving. We might want to support it. We might want to amend it. We might want to oppose it when whenever that becomes clear.
That is definitely what we would do, is bring those back. And I just want to say that I have met with the legislative person lead for EEA, and we do check in pretty regularly, and we'll be invited to their breakfast. So any of our priorities that align and we can work on together, we will very definitely do. So we've already we'll continue and hopefully deepen that connection. And I'd like to do the same with OSEA. We haven't done that in the past, but that's a great suggestion.
Great.
And Gordon, it's for the OSBA. Judy's informed me, and we're going to be tag teaming on they have a legislative a session weekly for OSBA committees on what's happening at the piece of it and what their focus is on. So we're going to make sure that one of us is attending those and be able to report back to the board on what those priorities are. We have not yet come up with our communication plan to what the board looks like. That is on that I would say that's on me, because I've been MIA for a big piece of this. So Judy has been taking a bulk of the communications on these. So, but our priorities have been, because the legislative breakfast has been coming up very quickly on, and the session is with the election in next week has been we've been very focused on to see what that's going to look like. And I think it's going to dictate a certain amount of what our direction is going to look like in the next month or so. So that's where our head has been. I should say, I think that's where my head has been. But yeah, I think the goal is looking at what is happening in all of our employee groups, and plus what's happening with all of our associations, getting those in a communication that makes sense to all of our board members without bombarding you with 8 million emails on here, getting our priorities straight, and then figuring out between which of our legislative bodies is going to be active in making these priorities into action. So if it's something like the preschool component of it, and that's going to happen at, say, at the county level, versus that's something that's unlikely to happen at a state level, then we go and look at that at the ESD level, or we look at that at a county level. I think that's going to be some triangulation of which of our legislative bodies is most likely to actually have the biggest impact in getting these things passed, or on those things on here. So that's a little bit of a research that we may have to pull some other people into.
And to add to that, Kirthi, exactly right. You made some connections with the federal, our group locally that connects with our federal delegation, and that could be an option too for some of these that require that. So.
I would love to ask a couple of questions. I understand that we're small potatoes and we're not crafting legislature to be considered, but I do think that we maybe should not lose sight of that as an option. I know that for some things it has to go through multiple times before it even gets any attention, even if it just gets dismissed right away. I think that it would be worthwhile for us to maybe pick a few of these, or even just one that we would love to pop. And I know we're late, but we're not so late. And that we'd like to maybe put into the hands of folks who are actually on the education committee. So whether it's Senator Gelzer or Senator Alfonso Leon, folks who actually would be the ones who would bring that forward. So then that takes me to my next question for our legislative committee. Breakfast, can we invite the education committee, even if they don't come? Could we extend an invitation, or is there some rule that makes it so we have to exclusively invite local legislators? And then let me just ask my last one really fast. Is for that legislative breakfast, can we also include an invitation to to like Linda Hamilton, right? She's your fellow OSBA Legislative Committee person for Lane County, is that right? So
Yep.
that she could also attend, just so that we continue that alignment along with, you know, Justin Potts or whoever else is doing that work for our employee groups. Now I'll my many questions, sorry.
The only thing I just want to say is we don't know yet who's on the education committee, and we may not know by the time our breakfast occurs, because that
Right.
will, there was a committee last year, those will go away. And there will
Right.
be new committees form, so we won't know. The legislature begins on January 17th this year. We may know before, in which case we could issue a last minute invitation.
And if we know, oftentimes folks do stay on the same committee, so it might just be worth inviting them. And if they aren't on that committee, they can decline the invitation. I don't think there's anything to be lost in sending an email with an invitation. I assume that they get so many that they decline that will just be another email for them to have to process, which I hate to be, but it might be worth consideration.
No, we might consider doing a separate meeting with them when we know who's on the committee. And there is something to be said about giving attention to our local folks. They pay closer attention to us because they're our elected officials. And, you know, people like from the ESD, Linda Hamilton is the representative to the board from our area. But we could also invite EEA, which we haven't, and they've, you know, before, invite Justin for sure. I don't know, we can definitely extend it. I just think there's a value to keep it with our delegation and then maybe do something with the education committee at a different time.
Sure. I mean, I think it's important for us to get our local legislators to support whatever ends up being submitted. But I do think that inviting our employee group collaborators into that space would, the same way they invite us to their legislative breakfast, it can only help for us to have a united message that it just strengthens it when there's unity and arms locked.
I also want to take some, I don't like, I mean, you just said it's small potatoes. I don't want us to think of it as like small potatoes. Like, what Laurel just said earlier about setting a precedent on like pay and these kinds of things. I think like having change at a local level and we're not a small district in comparison to a lot of places in Oregon. So I think taking that is, I think it's worth the effort of doing what we can and picking on those things. So I think it's all well and good to be self-deprecating in some regards, but I think like it's also understanding like, you know, what are the steps we can take to make some of that impact. And I like the idea of like, since we are learning this and maybe our board is changing direction in a certain way and becoming more like we're choosing to possibly become more of an activist versus when things, that's a decision we can make together, but like taking an issue and seeing what those things can be, I think is a good way to like gauge what that would even look like and what that process would look like.
I totally agree. And I said small potatoes because I heard somebody reference our maybe less significant voice, but I don't think that should stop us from trying to grow that voice at all. So less self-deprecating and more erring on the side of not having a sense of self, you know, grandiosity or whatnot. So
good balance. I like that, Maya.
Just be pragmatic about it. Like we may or may not have the impact we think we can, but we should at least try for it, right?
For example, the compensation for school board members, we can't do anything with that until that ORS is eliminated. And until somebody brings that forward, and it probably has to come forward 4 or 5 times before it happens, we need to put that bug in somebody's ear instead of waiting for somebody else to initiate that process. So that one, for example, it just would be worthwhile getting it into the hands of that idea, into the hands of somebody who might not have prioritized that.
I think that's very specific, and that's a great example. And at the breakfast, by sharing these with our local legislators, they also can point us in a direction of people they know that are working on them. They've done that before. And also you can see who might have demonstrated some interest in it that we could get to help us work on it. So there's a lot of good that comes from it. It also, they share with us what they're hearing and seeing and what the priorities are, which sometimes has helped shape some of our agenda.
Well, I look forward to it, to both of them, the EEAs as well.
So our next step with this is we're gonna take this and try to put it in a more coherent, combining some of these things in a way in categories, as Kirti said, and bring it back to you. We're working towards a handout for our legislative breakfast, which, drum roll, we got a date that everyone can go to, which is January 9th. And we really looked for an earlier time because the legislature is starting January 17th this year, which is at least 2 weeks earlier than they typically do. So
We should
I'm
say
really-
everybody on the board. That has yet to be determined if people who were invited can come, but at least we can at least show up to it.
Yes, no, that's, no, we haven't invited people. We will be sending out an invitation at the end of this week or early next week to our legislators. Okay, so everyone mark your calendar. We will send that out also in writing so you have it. And then the very last thing I want to share very briefly is that you have seen this before in an email. And I'm just going to show it again because we're going to have to vote on this at our next meeting. And Debbie is kindly going to upload both of these documents into Board Book when we're done with the meeting as well, so the public can see them. This is the document that the Oregon School Board Association, I'm just showing it so it'll tickle your memory. The Oregon School Board Association has developed with the legislative policy group, which I'm on from our region. And they have, they're wanting us to, I'm sorry, I'm not getting to, I'm going to have to take this off full screen. It is formatted in, oh, wait, that's not what I wanted to put up. I put the wrong thing up. I will email it and it'll be in Board Book. It is the principles and the values that they will be lobbying for. So I'll send you that document and people can review it and we'll have a discussion on it at our next meeting and a vote.
Is your desktop really that full?
It is. I'm sorry. I was trying to avoid showing it, but it is. I find everything in short order, but Laurel, you weren't supposed to call me out.
It's making us feel a lot better, Judy. Don't worry about it.
It's all good.
No, I'm really embarrassed, but that's okay. We made this work.
Thank you, Judy and Kirti. Are there any other questions for Judy and Kirti before we move on? Okay, great. Thank you so much. This was, I feel excited. You know, it's always, you never know what's going to happen. And it's always nice to be on this side of it. Who knows what we'll be feeling like on the other side of the session. So next item on the agenda is items for action. We have the equity trainer selection process, and I see Rob Hess, our chief of staff, is going to be presenting to us, and I believe you will be joined by Kalina Beard. Or
yeah, Kalina Beard, our brand new chief administrative services officer, is today was her first day. And so we're throwing her right in here so you could meet her. And also she has an extensive background in procurement. And so when this proposal talks about staff, working with staff to review these proposals, she's going to be helping me do the review and et cetera. So, and I think Colina is there. I don't know if her video's on, but yeah. So on the proposal there, this is on page 44 of the board packet. And on that page, those 2 pages, you see what we discussed last week. And we took your feedback and added in the lived experience point concept. I put some points on here. Those points, of course, if there's different weighting that you would like to do, that's up to you to discuss and decide. And the other decision we're asking for you to take action tonight is to choose which of the 3 options there, or if you want to create an additional option and discuss it and vote on it, that's fine as well. But the first option has to do with you have a smaller group that works with staff to narrow the proposals to 3. We have 8 proposals that we're going to be reviewing. The board will be looking at. So the option A is a smaller group gets down to 3, and then the whole board interviews the 3 and then selects the 1. Option B is everyone reviews the 8, and then the top 3 are narrowed, and then the board interviews all 3 and then selects the 1. And then option C is a smaller group does all of the process, limiting the 8 to the 1, bring it to the board for a vote. So we'll turn it over to you to discuss and make proposals and decide.
Oh, Gordon?
Thanks. And thank you, Rob, and the other people who worked on this. I'm not trying to preempt debate or anything, but just to kind of frame things. To me, I would like to propose that we do option B. I'm fine if everybody wants to do one of the other ones. This just feels like it's an issue where that's important enough to enough board members that rather than having any tension around like who would the 2 or 3 people be that narrow things down, that we could do that all of us in the same spirit and hopefully less time than we do the budget committee appointments. So
before we jump into a discussion, would you make a motion so then we can move into discussion?
I move that we adopt the proposal with option C that is in our packets.
Option C.
Sorry,
I thought
you said B.
You're totally right. That was my mistake. I move that we adopt the proposal with option B.
Is there a second? Judy? Okay, so Gordon moves to adopt option B in the proposal, and that is seconded by Judy Newman. Is there a discussion? I didn't mean to cut you off, Gordon. It's your motion, so you can finish talking. You get to talk first. Okay.
I said everything I need to say.
Great. Judy?
So actually, Gordon, you preempted. I mean, I actually am favoring option B as well for the reasons you said. I think this is important to all of us, and we're all are going to need to work with whoever we hired. And I think it's important for all of us to be part of that process. So I would definitely support option B as my first choice.
Thanks, Judy. Laurel?
I do not have the pages in front of me, but I want to just clarify. B is where everybody looks at all 8 proposals, and then we decide on narrow it to 3, and then we decide to interview the final 3.
Do you want me to read it? It's just a few sentences, so you can.
No, I just want to make sure I had the right one in my head.
Yes, that's the right one. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, I that was the one I was wanting too. Thanks.
Is there anyone else who would like to ask questions or contribute to the discussion? Laurel?
On the topic of how the criteria, I would very much, I wish I had brought it up in front of me. There was the percentages of in the criteria, and I wanted to know, working with past public boards, because it's a different entity than like a nonprofit board or anything else. So if that could be in there, even as a small percent, I would like to ferret that out somehow. And
yeah, would it help, Laurel, if I shared my screen? You could see the criteria that we have so far. fit that in?
If that's not a hassle, otherwise I can just take the time to
No,
open it.
no,
back up.
I can do it. I can do that, no problem. I disappeared from the meeting, so as
So,
long
Rob,
as that doesn't happen again. Yeah. Can you guys see or no? Are we there?
Yeah. Yeah, I see it.
Okay. So these are the categories on the proposal. So, and Laurel, you were looking for what particular area of expertise? Would that fall under skills and knowledge?
I probably would be skills and knowledge or work experience, but work with public board. And that would be helpful to have under there.
I'm wondering if we can finish the motion conversation and then come back to this so we don't get lost in moving into the criteria.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
I'll stop sharing then.
yeah.
That was great. Thank you, Rob. I just want to finish up the conversation and stay on topic. So Judy, do you have something that you want to say about the option B?
Yeah, I had a question I forgot to ask earlier. So in reading it, as I said, I liked it. And I just wanted to ask the question because it does say that we'll rank the finalists with confidential balloting and submit those votes to the chief of staff. I didn't think we could do confidential balloting when we meet in public. That's my question. I don't know if we can actually do that. You might know differently.
Yeah, I think with this is not like electing someone to a budget committee or another formal position. This is selecting a contractor. So I believe under this, and I can double check on that, but I believe the confidential balloting is permitted to do a hiring like of this nature. And it's also important to know that each of these people that you'll be reviewing their proposals is that it's all you'll all have to sign non-disclosure agreements because you'll be looking at things that are part of their work, et cetera, these proposals. So it'll be one of those things that Kalina will help us make sure we follow all the rules regarding the selection process. So, but it's our preference to do confidential balloting. If the law doesn't permit it, then we can make that adjustment. But I believe it's permitted in selecting a firm to work with us like this.
Thanks. Are there any other questions or comments about the motion to select option B? Okay, in that case, all those in favor of selecting option B, raise your hand and say aye. Okay, I see a unanimous approval of the motion. Yes votes from Judy Newman, Maya Rabasa, Michelle Shu, Kirthi Hasija Kaufman, Gordon Lafer, Alicia Hayes, and Laurel O'Rourke. Option B is the selection process that we have selected. Now, Laurel, would you like to take the floor back over and talk about the work experience inclusion that you want in that field?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we include work experience with a public board and the amount of time and when it happened and such as just as so we can know that if we can just have that knowledge. And I'm not picky about what section it goes under. I just would like to know. That's one of the questions.
Okay. Yeah, I think we could fit that under work experience probably best.
Do we have a second? Okay, Judy. So Laurel moves to add experience working with public boards into the consideration of the proposals, and that is seconded by Judy. Is there any discussion? Gordon, you have your hand raised, and then I see Judy after you.
No, go ahead, Judy. I don't need to speak.
I just want to say thank you, Laurel. I was going to bring the same thing up, and I think it's really important to include experience with, I'd even prefer if it was as school boards, but elected officials, because when I know I interviewed in the past equity folks to work with our board, the fact that we're an elected body and have to do that work in public is really tricky for people. And if someone hasn't had experience in it, it is really challenging. And many people went, oh my, I didn't know that in Oregon. So that's why I think it really is important. So thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions about including work experience with public boards? Okay, let's call the question. All those in favor of including work experience with public boards in our proposal criteria, raise your hand and say aye. I see a unanimous vote with yeses from Judy Newman, Maya Rabasa, Michelle Shu, Kirthi Hasija Kaufman, Alicia Hayes, Gordon Leifer, and Laurel O'Rourke. With that, thank you very much, Kalina and Rob. We are ready to move on to our next item for action, which is board and superintendent committees and committee membership. So I'm not going to read through everything that was in the packet, but in the packet you'll recall that there was the working agreements around this process, as well as the actual appointments that are currently in place. I just want to give a little history to remind us that we're all on the same page. As I'm sure you all recall, in July, I consulted with each of you to determine your interest and gauge your availability to help me and Gordon determine committee assignments. Before bringing the final assignments to the board on August 3rd, I also came back to you and let you all know which committees you would be matched with. Following our working agreements, we brought those committee assignments to the board meeting on August 3rd, where we shared out the assignments in a public meeting and ratified the decision unanimously without objection. Several of you indicated appreciation for being matched with certain committees and also for being assigned to the number of committees you had the ability to take on, considering the scope of your availability. I will also note that if anyone is feeling like they would like to take on more committee work, as we just heard from Judy and Kirthi, there is a tremendous amount of work on the legislative committee, and they recently put a call out for another board member to join them and have yet to have anybody take that offer. This is an incredibly labor-intensive committee when our legislature is in session, as it is this year. So I want to remind everyone that that opening has yet to be filled. And this is currently on our agenda as an item for action at the request of a board member at our last meeting, as our assignments were made according to our working agreements, and our working agreements will be on our agenda for our November 16th meeting. It would seem a discussion around the assignments might best be held within that context, but I will pass it off if anybody has a motion they would like to make, or if we want to move on. Judy, I see your hand raised.
I'm sorry, it was for the last item, which I can.
Okay.
I thought we were going to talk about more. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Were you not done with the last item? Oh.
I thought we were going to also, I had some feedback about the scoring criteria, which I thought we were going to also do. So I don't mean to derail. We can go ahead with this and come back to that.
Let's finish this and move right back to that. I'm sorry. I thought that I asked if anybody had, I didn't see your hand up and I moved on. Laurel?
Are we going to finish the last topic, or what's happening?
I think Judy just said that would like us to finish this and move back to the other so we don't jump back and forth.
Okay. So yeah, I'm the one who asked for this to be added to the agenda. My interest is that it's important as a board of 7 people that we all participate in subcommittees. So I think it's a bit of a red herring to talk about all the committees, because the committees we know about, that's a different kind of assignment process. But the subcommittees happen during the year, and they kind of come as they are at different times. And so we're in a place right now that we have a few people on most of the committees. And I just want to encourage the board to understand we are a stronger board if we do our part in being in these committees. So it's, while it is entirely possible that nobody else volunteered, I have heard from others, especially for the mental health committee, that people didn't know that that they were asking for people to volunteer for that committee. And so I think it's really important that we make time and allowance. And I realize people are being very defensive, Maya, about this, but the reality, you and Michelle are in the most committees. And that's a lopsided board. And really what I want from this is not defensiveness. I want for people to sit in their values and realize if somebody wants to be on a committee, and they should, it'd be entirely fair for somebody who is on a lot of committees to step aside. It is, we do not own certain sections of this board because we have more time to commit to it. And I encourage other board members to talk and volunteer, because we are stronger or better.
Laurel,
excuse me, why do you keep interrupting me? Well, this always happens when I talk. You continually interrupt me.
It doesn't always happen, and we are in the middle of a meeting during an item for action. So like I asked Gordon before we engage in discussion, do you have a motion that you would like to make?
I was talking about what I asked to bring, and then it was tabled by Gordon. So I guess the Gordon has to ask to untable it. I'm not sure. Because if tabled, their motion has to be to take it off the table. If we want to follow rules, and absolutely, let's follow the rules. So I motion to take this item off the table and to have a discussion about it.
Okay, before we can have a discussion about it, we need another motion, but let's finish the first one. Gordon, you second removing it from being tabled? I would love input maybe from Alicia if we have to do that step.
I would completely second I thought we tabled it till this meeting. I completely support not having it be tabled, but I just want clarification on what the it is, because I don't remember, like, and it'd be helpful to know, like, what's the specific proposal that we should be discussing from you, Laurel.
That's why we need a motion so we know what we're discussing.
So, okay, a motion. Well, it's interesting because really what I would like to do is have a discussion about how we are as a board, and for people to, for there to be more equity in our assignments. There is not equity in our assignments right now. So it is absolutely true that the only time I can talk is not when just I'm making a motion. So you opened this with a long defensive discourse. And what I'm saying is I would like for us to have a discussion about the equity in our committee assignments. It is important that we make this balanced. If it's only important to me, first, that would make me sad because we'll never be a strong board when only 2 people are on most of the committees. But second, that we need to have this discussion about, I guess we should move to have a policy that asks for equity in our subcommittee assignments. That we make sure every person on the board is volunteering for their share of these assignments. That's what I motion for.
Is there a second for the motion to have equity? I'm sorry, I'm not sure I can repeat that, but so that we have everybody doing their share of the work in the committee assignments?
Subcommittee assignments. Sub
And the
and
sub-
special, though, are those other committees aren't special committees, are they? They're just board committees. Is that correct?
I don't know what
The
you're
other
referring.
committees are standing. They're referred to as standing committees in our
Okay,
board.
so I'm
policy.
not talking about the standing committees.
Okay. So is there a motion that everyone do their share of the work regardless of the committee?
The motion is that there is equity in committee assignments, and so there cannot be somebody that is on several committees and then people that are on no committees.
Is there a second?
Can I just add? No, I'm not seconding, but I have a clarification question. Just to be clear on what, like, is the proposal that whatever, we do the math and whatever it comes out to, everybody has to be on 3 committees or 2 committees and can only be on that number, something like that. Whatever that number is, like we take the number of committees divided by the number of members of the board and then everybody's on that number. Is that what the proposal is?
Well, I don't think it can work like that unless we're putting together 3 committees on the same night. Subcommittees and special committees come at different times. I'm saying the proposal is that we look and see who's on what committee and then realize that other board members should be asked first to be on the committees that are coming up. It won't always work perfectly, but if we have the rule where we're going to look at it and be aware, we won't be where we are now, where we have a disproportionate amount of people on committees.
Before we continue the discussion, is there a second for this? Because it was asked to be an item for action, so we need to have it as a motion on the table for discussion. Otherwise, it should have been an item for information.
I was supposed to be able to talk about it last week.
As an item for action, which means making a motion. Is there a second
It was
for,
an item for discussion, actually. I don't know why somebody put an item for action.
it's what was requested at the beginning of the meeting? If there's not a second, then this motion doesn't move forward.
Okay.
Is there, I see 3 hands raised. Is there another motion so that we can initiate discussion? Alicia, I don't know, Gordon, Michelle, and Judy, if you wave your hand or is your hand raised for discussion?
I don't have a motion.
Michelle, do you have a motion? No. Judy, do you have a motion?
I don't have a motion. I think I have some questions for clarification in order to make a motion. That's where I am, but.
Well,
go ahead.
if you second it, then we have the discussion and then you don't have to vote on it. That's how the policy works.
Alicia, do you have a motion?
I wanted to give one a try. So let me, I would move that we put this in our working agreements, that we look at equity and inclusion in all our, not only standing committee, but our ad hoc committees, and that we review midway through the year to ensure and affirm, like we do, affirm that those committees assignments are as equitable and inclusive as possible. That is my motion. It goes in our working agreements. We haven't had something. So if I get a second, I'll speak to the motion.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I saw Judy's hand first, but Alicia suggested or moved to take this to the conversation in our working agreements to revise our working agreements so we look at our assignments midway through the year and make sure that ad hoc committees are being assigned to maintain equity and access. And
And
Judy,
inclusion. Yeah, access. I would go with either one. So
Okay.
if I can talk to it right now.
absolutely, your motion.
Thank you, Maya. There is a lot of power in the committees, and I think people have different passions in those committees. And I think putting it in the working agreements is a good idea. We've never had that before. And we did add the affirming as a board, which I think kind of moved us towards we all agree. And I like that. And I think when we get going, I really appreciate what Laurel says. Sometimes when you're working, it's really hard to get and be part of groups, and we should do our best to make sure all our voices are heard. And it puts a lot of, and we want those voices. So I really, I like it. I want it in our working agreements. I think maybe next year you guys could decide, we could decide, let's look at a policy. But right now, I would want it in our working agreements, and I want it that we look halfway through the year, because we get busy and we don't look back. And so that's why I moved in. I appreciate it coming forward. So that's my 2 cents on my motion. Thanks.
Thanks, Alicia. Gordon, and then Michelle and Judy.
Okay. I guess a couple things. So one is like, just to, I think everybody knows this, right? The process that we have now is that the chair and vice chair talk to everybody, say, here's what committees we think everybody should be on. That is subject to a vote of approval or disapproval from the rest of the board. And then those are only the people who have to go. And then anybody can go to any meeting, with the only limitation that we can't have 4 people at any meeting, because we can have up to 3 people at any meeting. But anybody who's not assigned to a committee and wants to go to the meeting can go to any standing, special, subcommittee, anything, as long as it's not more than 3 people. I don't know exactly what is meant by equity in this case. I know what it means in our equity lens, but this sounds like something else. I'm fine if it ends up that we all are on the equal number of committee. Basically, I think, like I said before, we can do more work if there are more people willing to be on more committees. I'm not aware of, except for what sounded like potential confusion about the mental health committee. I'm not aware of anything else. I haven't heard anybody else saying, I really want to be going to this committee meeting and I'm not able to. And I think in our working agreements also, it says that the leadership is supposed to make those committee assignments with an eye towards rotating people from year to year, so that everybody has a chance to be on every committee, or some kind of language like that, which I also agree with. So to me, I don't see what the problem is. These subcommittees do work, but they make no decision. None of these committees make any decisions. The only thing any of them do is bring something back either to the board or to the superintendent. I am super grateful for every member of the board who's serving on a committee, because it's one more thing that we can move forward without me having to do it, or to be involved in every step. And, you know, in terms of, I mean, we have the names already about who's on every committee. I haven't counted it all up, but if Michelle and Maya are on 4 committees each, and I don't know if Alicia's on 4 committees each, I'm just super grateful. It does not seem like a problem to me. I'm grateful that people are putting time and energy in. I know everybody can't, and that's why, and that's why, I think that's why they don't make decisions. That's why they just bring things back to the rest of the board. Thank you.
Michelle?
Yeah, I agree with Gordon. I'm still not clear on what the issue is. If more people want to join more committees and 3 people can be on them, then I suppose we can look at that. I feel like everyone's plate is very full, and we're learning from each other. I don't know exactly how the legislative committee works, and I listen to what Judy and Kirthi have to say, and they inform me. And I'm so grateful that, as Gordon said, that I don't have to pay attention and dive deep into what happens on every committee, because I wouldn't be able to handle or process that. It's too much. And I feel like we're sharing the work.
Thanks, Michelle. Judy?
Yeah, I can't disagree with what any of the board, my board members have said. I think, Gordon, you recapped the process as it is. But I think this is what I think has happened more. And maybe the motion that we have on the table is a potentially good solution. So I'm not really sure on this list what we're calling a standing committee and what's a subcommittee. Everything's labeled sort of subcommittee. But some of them did get formed mid-year last year. So for example, I think that's what happened with the mental health and the student voice committee. And so I know when I was chair last year, I didn't, go on any more committees because other people wanted to step up, and that was great. I had my plate full. But then this year, when we looked at them again at the beginning of the year, when I talked with Maya about my choices and stuff, those weren't even on the table because they already had people on them. And I, at this point, had a little more time. It's not the chair anymore. And was sort of, I really have an interest and a passion for the student voice one and for the, and I'm also grateful for the work everyone did, but they weren't sort of on the table, and we didn't really have a way to maybe change the membership up for those. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but I'm sort of getting clear about maybe where that process could be different. We could re-look at those each year. And the only other thing I would say is that a couple of the committees that I know I'm interested in have 3 people on them, so it's hard just to come because then there's 4 of us. And so that is something that we always have to coordinate. Yes, I feel free and welcome to go anywhere, but that makes it a little challenging. So I think that's where some of those feelings came up, and maybe the agreement is every year we look at all the committees and then reassign, or we look at them again mid-year if things get formed throughout the year. So.
Okay, so I put myself in the queue, and Judy, I know that the mental health committee is actually the only new committee. We talked about forming it last year, and we talked and talked and talked, but we never actually formed the mental health committee. That's the only new one from last year. And when I brought them to everyone, we did talk about all of them. And, in terms of the question of equity, it's not about making sure everyone has the equal amount of work. It's also about acknowledging what people are asking to be able to take on. And there were certain people who asked to take on less for different reasons. Some people had a heavier workload at their jobs. Some people were on 6 committees last year and did not want to be on a huge number of committees this year. So in terms of the question of equity, that was also an important component, is carrying the load for some folks who had less time and less ability to put that time in. So at the August 3rd meeting, Judy, you offered to be an alternate for the mental health committee, and we agreed that that would be a great thing. I think that is an absolutely important committee for us to have lots of voices on. So maybe when we discuss our working agreements, which is what my point was when I introduced the topic, it wasn't anything other than to get us all on the same page, but was to point out that this was done according to our working agreements. So if what we want to do is revise our working agreements, that's a completely different question. The only other thing that I'll add is that we haven't created any ad hoc committees. All of the committee work that's been done is the same assignments that were agreed on at our August 3rd meeting. There haven't been any more added to it. The chart that was shared in the packet shows that 4 of us have 4 committees assigned to us. Myself, Michelle, Laurel, and Judy if she counts one of them as an alternate. 2 of the committee members asked for less committee time, and 1 person is in the middle and they asked for less, and I pushed them to take 1 more on. So that is the distribution. It's not factual that Michelle and I are on the majority of committees. There's 12 committees and she and I are both on 4, just like Laurel and Judy. So I just want to make sure that we are having this conversation with all of us on the same page. I always appreciate making decisions with an equitable approach, but the equitable approach also has to be the process of listening to what people want to do and what people can do and incorporating that. And I did that. I asked everybody what they wanted to do, and everybody got their top 2 choices. Everybody. I'll pass it off to Gordon.
Thanks. I just want to say a couple of things. One is personal request to Laurel, which is I may have missed it wrong. It seemed to me like you were making the universal, like, okay, blah, 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 sum up already sign when I was talking. Maybe that's wrong, but as allowing that whatever I'm saying might be annoying or long-winded, it's kind of disconcerting to be able to do that. So if it's possible to avoid, that'd be great. The main thing I wanted to say is Are
you telling me what to do right now?
I'm asking you not to make dismissive motions at me while I'm talking.
And how did you know that was towards you? You
I just said
assume
that I
that
might-
as a white male that everything about you? I don't think so.
Laurel, I
think that
just
was
said that
rude
I
and you
might
need
have
to
gotten
stop.
it wrong, but
No,
that if that's what it
You
is,
do not
then I'd
police my
appreciate
actions.
it.
That does not happen.
Fine,
Please let
okay,
me-
then it's my mistake. The points I wanted to make is just that, one, I mean, Judy, you'd mentioned that it wasn't clear what are subcommittees and what are other things, and that is in the packet. I'm not saying like, oh, you should have seen it, but if you want to look where in the part of the packet, I think it's page 47 of the packet.
I
And
have
it's like
that.
too much information, but and then I guess the one thing that seemed to me like it might solve the point that you raised, and I don't exactly remember when the Student Voice and Mental Health Subcommittee is, but maybe if we revise our working agreements just to say if there is a new committee that is formed after that initial, beginning of the year when all committee assignments are made, that it goes through the same process. Like everybody gets to talk to leadership, make a proposal, it has to be approved by the board as a whole, so that there won't be, because I understood you to say there might have been things that came up after that not everybody was aware of, and that seems like a legitimate thing, but maybe we could solve that just by saying, we have to go through that to make sure we go through that process if something new comes up after the initial set of committee assignments. That's all.
Thanks, Gordon. Laurel?
Yes, so the conversation we're having and the defensiveness that is happening, I was hoping to have a conversation about equity and everybody being on having an equal amount. We are not an equal amount in committee assignments. I think, and when I talk about transparency on the board, when I talk about communication, Maya Rabasa and Gordon Lafer used to talk about it all the time, but now we have no transparency and very little communication. Our public meetings are not being broadcast for the public to see. We have less clarity than we had last year. We have more secrecy than we had last year. While it says I'm on the Student Voice Board, I went to, I think 1, maybe 2 meetings, and everything happened with Maya and Michelle. That's not a huge deal in and of itself. What I am saying, the behavior needs to be above board. And my intent is saying not everybody needs to be defensive and protect themselves, is to say, because of our board's integrity, we need to make sure we're all doing our part. It is not, if you are on a board, you have asked to be here, and then you're asked asking not to participate unless you're ill, that's not appropriate. If you are ill, then I get it. But if you're not, and you are just using your privilege to say, I'm busy over here, sorry, you guys do everything, it's not appropriate. We need to all do our part. I would really like to see things done differently. I would like to see the transparency and the communication that was talked about so much last year actually happen. It's starting to happen, but it's only Andy that's doing it. I am very concerned about what is happening this year because we want our parents to have this information. I want our educators to know exactly what we're doing. I want students to be able to see this and know. We're getting more questions from students who are like, what is actually happening with the student voice thing? If we have these meetings out where the people can see them, then we have the clarity and we have the transparency, and then everybody can see it and know what's going on, but it's not happening. And so that's where my concern comes in, and it's not unfounded. Everybody should be doing their part if they possibly can. And that is equity. The other thing you talked about, Maya, was privilege. This is equity. We signed up for this, and while we may not get paid, this is working for the public, and it's important. So that's my intent here. Thank you. And I also would like to say, I would like to remove myself from the Mental Health Committee and to appoint Judy Newman.
We're in the middle of another motion. You can do that afterwards, but Judy is already the alternate. So if you remove yourself, she automatically takes your spot.
I have not seen anything that says anything about an alternate.
It was discussed at our August 3rd meeting. You can go back and listen to it.
What motion is up right now?
Alicia's motion, which is why I'm calling on Kirthi, so we stay on topic.
Thanks. I just figured I'd weigh in since I'm on here and I'm that middle person who is on 3 committees. Yeah, we look at this. I'm all about an equitable thing on it. And I think one of the things of being part of a board member is that we talked about this with the compensation thing earlier, which is like having people who come from diverse backgrounds and different places to be able to do this thing. I come from a extremely high place of privilege. I work from home, but I do travel internationally. I have a full-time job. I've got 2 young kids. I also live with chronic illness. So I don't know what it means to be like, you can't contribute unless you're ill. I do live with a continuous chronic illness that does put me out of commission for many things. I am still doing my part. I'm taking part in these committees. I love that I'm able to contribute. There are going to be days that I am not going to be actually upright and functional. And for those days, I'm grateful that I have people who are able to take on a load and contribute and take those parts of me that allow me to be able to have access to those committees and the stuff that's coming out from them and still be an active board member who can contribute to my community in those things and be able to read minutes that come out of it. Don't actually have to be upright in meetings at all the time, be laying in my bed and taking on those minutes and then doing those keepits on it. So I do want to put that out there, that it isn't just on being a part of something means you have to show up in a particular way at every single time. I think work can be done in many different ways. And as we're looking at things like accommodation for our kids and these neurodivergencies and all the other things too, we have to have that same level of respect for our adults and our community members who are volunteering to be on here, and understand that we're all going to have to lift each other up while we're in this. So when I'm not looking at this as that every single one of us has to be contributing exactly the same way at exactly the same time and in exactly the same manner at all things, I have to look at it as a year-long contribution of what we're doing to lift up our community and our board and our students, and contributing in a way that is, as a sense, where we can and what manners we can do it as an entirety. And that to me is what equity and inclusion about, is what you can do. It's never going to look the same. It's never going to look equal for everybody, right? Equity is about giving you the scaffold that you need in order to do what you need to do in order to get what you can do and contribute in the best way possible for you. It's never going to look the same for all of us. So I am grateful. I am not opposed to looking back at the committees and things are like looking up in the middle of the year. And especially when new things are added, I think, Gordon, that's a great idea, especially when new committees are added, to go back and look at those and whatnot on here. But like as a committee member who is on to 3, holding the middle ground on there, knowing that this will change next year and have this on there, I am extremely grateful for being allowed to pick and choose on the committees I want to take part in. There are some that I don't know anything about that I got placed on, that I am learning and very quickly trying to like learn things I don't know about and preaching on those things. So that's my rant on it today. I guess that's what you can call it. But like, I really am appreciative of the accommodations that my fellow board members, and that goes to all of you, all 6 of you that are not me, have allowed me to be able to be a part of this in a way that I feel I am contributing. So like, I know I sound really defensive about that when I'm saying that right now, but like in the 6 months I've been on, like I do actually genuinely appreciate the space that you have given me and allow me to actually be that member that feels somewhat productive about this. So, you know, thank you. And I hope that continues to be part of the conversation as well, moving forward on it.
Thank you, Kirti. Michelle?
You know, there have been comments about board members telling other board members what they can and cannot say or what they can and cannot do. And I feel like this is a case of being told what to do. And I really don't appreciate it. I'm invested in this school district and the students, and these meetings can be very confrontational and stressful. And yeah, I would be really appreciative if we could build trust and have our own agency to make our own choices and contribute in ways that we choose. What I'm saying is I would love to work collectively.
Thank you, Michelle. Gordon?
Just in the interest of trying to move towards some kind of decision, I wanted to ask Alicia if she would consider it a friendly amendment if the proposal was not to do a whole mid-year review, but just to say that if there are any new committees that come up, say the thing I said before, if any new committees come up after the original bunch of assignments are made, that we go through the same process. And if that's not where you want to go, Alicia, that's fine. Then I'd like to vote on the original thing. Okay, that is so. Then with Alicia's thumbs up, I would propose that friendly amendment, and then maybe we could vote on that and just move towards closure on this discussion. All right, go ahead, Alicia.
Can you hear me okay? Thanks. So the amendment then would be that we do a mid-year look at new committee assignments and make sure that, you know, they are, and it is interesting. I'm going to thank you, and then I'll speak to that. Yes, I am fine. I am fine with that.
So I should say that wasn't what I was,
Okay, tell me what you were going to say.
What I was going to say is that instead of doing a whole mid-year review, because I'm just afraid like the more process we start, I mean, process is important, but I want to be able to get things done too, that we change our working agreements to say if there's ever a new committee that is created after the normal process of committee assignments at the beginning of the year, that it has to go through the same process we have for the regular ones, which means leadership talks to everybody, see who wants to do it, makes a proposal, it comes to the whole board for a vote, so that that we're not in the situation where there are new committees happening and being filled without everybody being knowing about it or having a fair shot to say, yes, I want to do that. So not a whole review, but just that we say that for any new committee that gets created at any point in the year after the initial assignments. And if you don't want to do that, it's fine. We can vote on the other thing and then.
Gordon, I like it. I just don't want to weigh us down, because sometimes it's as quick in a meeting as like you and you go become part of a meeting or go, and that's what makes me nervous.
Okay, so
that's
what's you're totally right. So how should we do it?
Pardon?
I said, you're totally right. So what's the smart way to do it?
Well, I don't know if it's smart, but I just like that mid-year look at that halfway through. So if we've added 2 new ones, then maybe the next 2 go to someone else. And the reason is not, I just want everybody's voice, but it just happens so quick sometimes, but I don't want to take that quickness out of our work. So that's why it was just, yeah. So if you want to do that, you probably should do it as a, yeah. Will you do it as its own amendment after we vote on this one? I mean, its own motion, because I think they're kind of 2 different ways of looking at it.
Sure.
Are you good with that? Okay. Thank you. So no friendly amendment. Thanks.
Okay, so where we stand now is we're still discussing doing a mid-year review. But in the meantime, that leaves us, Alicia, with the practice of doing it super quickly, which I think if we're doing it that way, we should always be considering who has what on their plate and who has what voice, because that would be aligned with our use of the equity lens. So I would support whatever Gordon proposes next, because those additions in the middle of the year, which happen quickly, can happen quickly if we have that list at our fingertips. And if people remember what they are doing and speak up and say, hey, I'm only on 2 committees, I'd like to be on another one. It seems to have worked out in the past. And so I would support what Gordon is proposing. I also want to just make sure that as the school board, we don't fall in the trap of defining equity as equality. That makes me really nervous when we use the same words in the same sentence. And when we equate having access to time as privilege, that is incredibly problematic, as we just heard from Kirthi, and it's very ableist. I'm very uncomfortable with people equating, for me personally, a privilege of having access to time. My access to flexibility in time is directly tied to the fact that I care for a disabled child who needs me at all times. I'm not here for anybody to label that as privilege, and I find that very offensive and very ableist. So I'm going to leave that with my own words there, in terms of reminding us that equity is not equality. Equity is hearing what people can do, and equity is also stepping up to fill places where there's holes. Gordon, you still have your hand raised. Did you want to speak again? Okay. And then Laura, go ahead.
I guess after the people who have their hands up speak, I would like to call the question and just get to vote on this and move forward.
Exactly what I was going to say. Laurel, and then Judy, and then let's call the question on this.
Yeah. When we're talking about equity and these things, I am not going to let the relational aggression that is happening right now define what I'm saying, especially since you, Maya, are on the most things. So that, you know, the white tears don't do it for me. So my thing is that I can't find the privilege on this board. It is huge, and absolutely have at it. I just hope that it was heard that we need to have more equity in committees. We can't not have same people doing the same committees over and over. So that's what I mostly wanted to see. And if everybody is volunteering for everything, other things, that's okay. the red herring that's been happening, which is something that happens a lot, which is also relational aggression, is when I talked about subcommittees and special committees, and Maya and Gordon keep trying to label it as all committees. And that is not what the subject was about. So go ahead, have at it. You know, the reality is in the long run, you'll lose, because when you have an equitable board and an equitable program, you are stronger. When you are inequitable, you are weaker. So that's how it works. There's a lot of data on it. Maybe you can look it up, Michelle, since you're nodding your head, but there's a lot of data to prove that. That's what I hope for. And that's what I can rest on my values to know what I'm asking for is right and correct. I also know there's a ton of privilege here that is absolutely not acknowledged. And I'm not going to cater to it. I'm going to say what needs to be said, and you guys will vote how you want to vote. So yes, I called the question.
Actually, Judy's already lined up to speak, and then the question is being called.
I believe absolutely, Judy, sorry, I didn't see that, but if somebody calls the question, then that means there has to be a vote to do that.
Well, right before you spoke, I said we will hear from Laurel and Judy, and then we will call the question.
Yes, but if somebody asks for it, that means a vote happens. And I'm just saying, if you want to use the system, you have to use it correctly.
So Judy, it sounds like Laurel does not want to hear from you and would like to call the question ahead of your speaking.
That was absolute relational aggression. I said, I see Judy, and that's absolutely fine. What you're doing is called mean girl relational aggression. Please do not be this.
Stop talking out of turn. It is too much. Judy, I would love to hear what you have to say, and then we will call the question as originally stated.
I think I just wanted to clarify one thing. I'm ready to vote then, and that is, so I think my question, the mid-year check-in is fine with me, but I think really the issue is that, so if you form a subcommittee mid-year, let's use mental health as an example, because we have, and people volunteer and go on that committee, and then the following year when we sign up for committees, does that it seems like that membership stood over the year rather than be open to other board members at that time. So clarifying that for me would be helpful. So let's say we form a committee mid-year, it's mental health, the fall comes along and the new chair meets with people. Is that an option to be on that committee, or is that membership set? Because I think that went both ways. That was my impression, and I could have had a wrong impression, but that was the way I viewed it. So that's where the glitch comes in.
So would you like me to respond to that, Judy?
Sure.
I think the only committee that was a mid-year created committee that carried over, or the two rather, was the North Visioning Committee and the Student Voice Committee. And the Student Voice Committee had a new member added to it. And this was all determined based on interest. And the North Visioning Committee had somebody request to no longer be on it, and a new person was added to it. And at the risk of sounding defensive, I will repeat that when we had the conversations this summer, I asked people what their priorities and desires were, and gave people those, and also for the folks who had more time and the ability to engage in more committees, I asked them to also take on some work that I thought they would be well matched with. With that, I will call the question. All those in favor of having a mid-year review of committees and what has been added to the committee work from an ad hoc perspective before we continue adding more, raise your hand and say aye. I see yeses from Judy Newman, Alicia Hayes, and Laurel O'Rourke. All those opposed to having a mid-year review of the ad hoc committees that have been added before adding more ad hoc committees, raise your hand and say aye. I see 4 yes, 4 no votes, including Maya Rabasa, Gordon Lafer, Michelle Shu, and Kirthi Hasija Kaufman. The motion does not pass. Gordon, did you have a different motion that you would like to make?
Yeah, my motion is that if we create a new committee in the middle of the year, I'm trying to take into account Alicia's wisdom. If we create a new committee in the middle of the year, that it has to be done in 2 meetings, at least, in the first meeting, either we'll go through the process or everybody will say, yeah, with no objection, so-and-so, and then we'll have 2 weeks in between. So if somebody realizes, oh, actually, I feel like I'm being left out of things, we'll be able to deal with that and come back and have a final vote. I don't want to, I could have no motion. I don't want to make this more complicated than it is. I'm just trying to take account of people not wanting to be left out, but in a way that doesn't create a whole lot of unnecessary process. So I guess that would be my proposal, is that if we have a new committee, we can either go through the whole thing we normally do, or we can just say in the meeting, without objection, it'll be you, and you, but then we wait and we finalize it in the following meeting. So there's a chance for somebody to realize they might want something to be different.
Okay. So what you're saying is that if we have ad hoc committees added during the year, we commit to a 2-meeting process.
Yeah.
Is there a second? Okay, Gordon moves that if we add ad hoc committees in the middle of the year, that we commit to a 2-meeting process. And Alicia seconds that. Is there discussion? Laurel.
I would like to understand how this is going to, where this is going to rest. Is this a policy? So where is this?
No, it would be in our working agreements.
So you're asking to add this to the working agreements. I didn't hear that said.
I didn't say it, you're right, but that's I think where it would make sense to go.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions or discussion? Okay, then we will vote. All those in favor of the motion to commit to a 2-meeting process for any ad hoc committees that are added to our slate mid-year, raise your hand and say aye. All those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, we have 6 board members voting in favor, including Laurel O'Rourke, Myra Rabasa, Gordon Lafer, Judy Newman, Alicia Hayes, and Kirthi Hasija Kaufman, and we have Michelle Shu, who has voted no. So the motion stands. And with that, we get to, does anybody have anything else they would like to do with this action item? Okay, then
Yes.
if you will. Yes, Laurel.
I would like to move to remove myself from the mental health committee.
I don't think you need to make that motion. You can simply remove yourself.
If you're appointed by the board, you don't just remove yourself. Then anybody could just not go to any committee. That makes no sense to the process.
I do believe that you can simply remove yourself from a committee, but if you would like to make the motion, Laurel moves to remove herself from the mental health committee.
I said that.
I'm repeating it because that's what I'm supposed to do. Is there a second? Judy Newman seconds the motion. Is there a discussion? Laurel, do you have your hand raised for discussion, or is that left from before?
Yeah, I'll speak to this. When I am told how to talk and the way to talk, and our board chair talks to me in derogatory ways constantly, and I'm on a committee with her, a committee that I asked to be formed and is dear to my heart, I will say that because it's not always about me, will ask to be removed from it. So somebody else, I guess it'll be Judy, by what you've said. Judy, is that your understanding as well, that you're an alternate? Because I didn't see that anywhere. Because I want this work to go forward and to be strong. And I want there also to be more people to be able to be on different committees, because integrity and honor is important to me. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments? All right. So considering this discussion, we will call the vote. All those in favor of removing Laurel O'Rourke from the Mental Health Committee, raise your hand and say aye. There are 7 hand raised, so that passes unanimously with yes votes from Laurel O'Rourke, Maya Rabasa, Gordon Lafer, Judy Newman, Michelle Shu, Andy Dye, Alicia Hayes, and Kirthi Hasija Kaufman. Laurel, you have your hand raised again?
I would ask that it be written as my request to leave the Mental Health Committee. Thank you.
Alicia, you have your hand raised. Did you want to finish up on that topic?
I did. Sorry, I thought it was mine that I couldn't hear you. So I just want clarity on this, and Andy, we can get it later, but it came up during this discussion, so I hope it's appropriate that I share. I just bring it up here. I know we can all go to any of these meetings, and we can even go, this is my understanding, if there's more than 4 of us. It's just that we can't speak. The only people that can speak are the people on the committee. So it's not, I see Gordon here. I just wanted clarity on that, because the way it was sounding, it was like people could go and you know, even though I'm not on the committee, I can go share my 2 cents, and that is not true. That's my understanding, and I think I'm getting head or nods, so I will let it go. Thanks.
So were the nods enough? Yes. Alicia.
Pardon. Did you have a question, or were you saying I didn't put my hand down?
No. I just said, so were the nods that you received while you were asking that question
Right.
enough?
Yeah, I think so. We all understand that that is the way it is. I just wanted to make sure I was tracking. Thank you.
No worries. Laurel, are you wanting to speak on this agenda item again?
I just wanted to say that, well, if you are not at work or doing something else, then you can attend. But we had asked, and then we had asked last year for these things to be uploaded so people can see them. And so I would love to see what's going on these other committees, and I can't. I have no idea. Because that helps inform me of my decisions when things come to the board, but I can't see it because of the lack of transparency. So while we may be able to go to the meeting if we can, it'd be great if we make a really concerted effort to make sure these are available, because that is also public meetings law. And we have made we made that request for all of our public meetings. I do not understand why it's not also for our subcommittee meetings, since they are public meetings.
Okay, just to clarify, Gordon and I do not upload those, so there's not a question of transparency there, but I do believe that Rob and Andy have heard you, and we will make sure that things are made accessible that are not as of now. Are there any other comments or motions for this agenda topic? Okay, in that case, I will hand it back over to Judy, and if we would jump back up one agenda item so that we can talk about the equity trainer selection process issue that Judy wanted to bring up.
I just wanted to talk about the points. I think that was also something for discussion, the points for the four or five cost thing. I mean, 4 or 5 things we're going to rate on. And I guess I would say number 3 should also be 30 points, and probably number 4, because I don't want to hire 10, shouldn't be less. It's less amount of points. Someone's got to be available and accessible to work with us if we hire them. And skills and knowledge to me are equally important as lived experience and work experience. So I'm just suggesting that we change the points there.
Are you making a motion, Judy?
Can I do that? I mean, that was something I thought was a discussion that we were having. I didn't know yeah, sure. I can make it an emotion.
Okay. So can you say the point you want all of the?
I move that items, the criteria that we're rating applications are 1 through 4, all have the option of having 30 points in the scoring process. They're equally weighted.
Is there a second for making those criteria categories equally weighted? Okay, Judy moves to make them equally weighted, and Laurel O'Rourke seconds that. Is there discussion? Okay. Oh, Rob, you go first, and then I'll jump in.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, Judy, there's also a cost item that's on the back of that page. I don't know if you saw that. I don't know if you wanted every item to be equal weighted or the cost still be a lower rate. I just wanted to.
Costs in terms of time, clear costs in terms. Can you just explain to me what that one means? The value of services and clear costs in terms of time.
Oh yeah, so that's in the proposal. One of the things that that come through is their hourly rate or how much they charge for the project. So that's what the cost element is.
Okay. Then I would say all of them. I would make a friendly amendment to my own motion, include number 5 as having 30 points as well. I think these are all really great criteria that were identified and are all important.
Okay, so I'll jump in. I think they're all really important also, and I'm glad that they're all on there. I will say that we weighted them differently so that, for example, I'll look at the availability and access, and to weight it equally makes me concerned that we will be eliminating people who are not local, for example, because their access and ability to work with us will be possibly compromised by their geographic location. So that's just one example of why we offered a different weighting of the different criteria. I know for us, the work experience and lived experience especially were the ones that we were most concerned with having the heaviest amount of weight, so that folks who don't have the same traditional access to building a CV would still be able to be seen as valuable. So that's my personal concern with making every single one of these equally valued. But I'll let other people speak up to that point. Is there any other discussion? Laurel?
I can see the point in weighing them equally, maybe price a little bit less. I would like, I feel like the intent was to make it an 100. I'm not looking at it right now, but maybe we reduce them all by a little bit instead of making it all bigger. I don't know if that's a big deal. But I don't, I guess if that's of interest of you to you, Judy, I would make a friendly amendment that that price would be a little bit less, because I mean, sometimes you pay more for labor that for some people, you know, and that's fine, I think.
Judy, do you accept the friendly amendment to make cost slightly lower, but everything else equal?
And what would be slightly lower, Laurel?
Just the cost of the services. That's it.
I think she means what would the rubric number be that you're proposing to reduce it to if it's not 30?
Well, it depends. I mean, if they're all even, it doesn't really matter what everything is. So if that's less or half of all the other even things, that's fine. I mean, it's all relative to everything, what everything ends up as. I mean, it's, if we end up at 160, I don't know if that's necessary if we reduce everything else to make it, to end up being 100, to make it easier for people.
Judy, do you have a response? I guess I'm not sure if there's an amendment on the table still, or did you take that back, Laurel?
I didn't get an answer from Judy, and I could take it back if it's not something that she's interested in.
I don't mind making it a little bit less. I just wouldn't want to go as far as a third of the points. So I could make it slightly less. That would be reasonable, but without knowing if we went on here, I would go 20 and not 30.
Okay, thanks.
And, yeah.
So if nobody else is adding their hand to the queue, I'll speak to myself and where I stand. For me, the cost should not be equal, and partly because when you're looking at folks who do equity work, way too often there are many white equity workers who undercut the rate that equity workers that are Black, Indigenous, Asian, Latinx are putting forth as prices. And it makes me concerned that if we have that as an equal cost, I mean, as an equal value on the rubric, that we will be putting folks at a disadvantage who are asking for their services to be valued at the level that they ask them to be valued at, when others will undoubtedly, based on patterns of behavior, undercut them. So for me, that's why, Judy, I appreciate the points you're making about them all having value, but I can't support them all being the same value, because it takes away value in the long run, as I see it. Are there any other comments, or shall we call the question?
My hand's up. Thank you. Yeah, so I hear you, Maya. So I think the amendment was less. So I think we accepted that one. And so the proposal as it stands is all would be 30, except number 5 would be 20. That's just for simplicity. And I just want to say, I really appreciate you explaining why you made those in your thinking with the rubric less. I mean, now I at least understand your thinking. But I don't know that skills and knowledge have to be in the traditional way. So I wouldn't want it to inhibit I don't know, other firms. So I don't really necessarily understand how that would inhibit other people to apply. But I do feel like we have to have someone that can actually be accessible, whether they live in town or out. I don't mean accessible as our beck and call, but there's a scope of work and we want to move the work. So we definitely want so that those people to be accessible, whether it's virtually or in person. I don't know. I understand your point, and I don't want to eliminate people from out of town at all, because I think there's some skilled people in this state that would be great. But I also want to be sure they're accessible and available to us. So I have to say that.
Right. And I appreciate your points. I still worry that keeping availability and access at the same level will, by definition, cost some folks who are not local points. Laurel, and then let's call the question so we can move on in the agenda.
I think I don't think we know what the access is going to be. So I think we're going to have very clear. We don't know exactly how it's been written out, unless I missed a file somewhere, which is entirely possible. But access could just mean that they're willing to, like, when they answer the question, they're willing to schedule us into. We don't know what it's going to be. So I feel like we're worrying about a problem that may not exist yet because we haven't made the schedule for it. There is no schedule, and the schedule would be partly what they would make of themselves. So I would say that equally we should look at people that are not in town and people that are out of town, and that we don't really know what everybody is going to be. But I do think them making the time and the effort and to do it would be helpful.
Yeah, and when we vote for this, I just want to remind everyone that this is the rubric for considering the proposals, not for voting at the end. So in terms of time and access, it's hard to think of anything other than what they offer to us in their proposal, which will be things like the location. So again, for me, it makes me nervous that if somebody's located in Eastern Oregon, it'll be hard to consider them easily accessible. Somebody in Southern California, I have no idea who the people are who have submitted. So I just want to make sure that we're not inadvertently prioritizing folks who are local by increasing that amount. And that's just where I personally stand, but I appreciate the motion, and let's call the question. All those in favor of restructuring the rubric so sections 1 through 4 are 30 points and section 5 is 20 points. Raise your hand and say aye. Okay, I see 3 yes votes. All those opposed to changing the rubric so everything is equal except for number 5 is 20 points. Raise your hand and say aye. I see 4 no votes. The motion does not pass. The yes votes are Laurel O'Rourke, Alicia Hayes, and Judy Newman. The no votes are Kirthi Hasija Kaufman, Gordon Lafer, Maya Rabasa, and Michelle Shu. Are there any other motions that anybody would like to make on this agenda item before we move on? Okay. In that case, we move on to item for action at a future meeting. The first topic is to consider revisions. I'm sorry, before I move on, I just want to say that Dr. Dye, our superintendent, does not have access to quality Wi-Fi right at the moment. So he is listening, but he is off screen. So I just want to make that known to everybody. So back to item for action at a future meeting, we have consider revisions to board policy KL, public complaints, and we have our Chief of Staff, Rob Hess, here to share with us.
Yeah, so your board packet contains one of the things that we've has been a priority is to review our current complaint process and to make it simpler to use, and also really explicit and clear to people when they have a complaint and how to file that. So what you see is a policy revision, and the AR is not, we want to get the policy approved before we develop an AR for it. So the AR would be the administrative rule on how someone does a form. And of course, until nothing has changed until you would approve something different. But what is in your packet there, and it starts on page 50. And if you want me to share screen, I can, but one of the first thing that that we want to really help our community understand is the different types of complaints and what they might do to file them and what categories they would fall into. So when we talk about this, we have so that page on page 50 kind of explains that. So this isn't part of the policy, but when we put this on the website and when we communicate it, we're going to include this information with it so that the public can understand. So if they have a bias incident, then we describe what that means. We define it for them, and then we show them our policies related to bias, discrimination, gender identity-based discrimination, sexual harassment, student hazing, bullying, menacing, racial harassment. And we cite the policies that we currently have and that you developed last year around these things, so that people understand and know that they can file a complaint for a lot of different things. Instructional resources, materials, staff complaints. A lot of times we think that complaints are only about people, but there's all sorts of other complaints that we want to let the community know that they can let us file, because one of the ways that we improve is by listening to community and looking into things that didn't go well through these procedures. So that's those first sections. And then the next section there shows in the proposal, and it's red is the new language, and then the striked out language. And then the clean copy is the final page there. And that shows what under draft copy, clean draft, that shows what the policy would look like. So open for discussion, feedback. Again, this is just kind of the first look at this, and we'll take this feedback and bring it back to you for a second read, and then a final at some point.
Thank you, Rob. I know this was in our agenda packets, so I hope we've had a chance to look at it, but this is not our last look at this. We're not voting on this today. Are there any questions for Rob while we have him here? Laurel?
When I think of access, I think of something just very simple and easy to access, and maybe not with all the ORs and all that. Maybe that could be on a separate sheet. And
yeah,
having the nitty gritty with the actual process of how to do it takes away from access instead of creates it. And there are a few people that just love to see all the ORs and things, but they're rare.
No,
and
yeah,
so
I totally agree, Laurel. When the policy, this is the kind of the legal part that, and then when we develop the AR, that's when we'll see that transparency, access, and how we display it on the webpage in terms of people being able to find it easily and fill it out. So that's kind of will be the next step after the policy is approved.
I was hoping for a lot different policy, in the sense like it says a response will be sent in 10 days and then you can appeal. That really means that somebody's made a decision in less than 10 days about a complaint, which is concerning depending on what it is, right? And that doesn't say depending on what it is, it just says you're going to get a response and then you can appeal it or not. So I kind of want this to, not kind of, I want it to be something, what we are famous for as a district is people make complaints and they disappear.
Right.
They're gone in the
Mhm.
ether. Nobody's seen them, and they're just gone unless you are somebody who has the cachet to keep that ball in the air, right? Which a lot of people do not.
So Laurel, if you look at the clean copy, the one that's on starts on page 57 there, we didn't put the deadlines of the 10 days. That is not in this policy. That will be in the AR when we develop it. So I'll take that feedback, and when we develop the AR, you'll be able to look at, are the timelines the ones that we want?
Okay. And I just want it, when I think of the equity lens and people looking at and who has access and who has the time, how do we create space for everybody to know that most people do not know, because principals and admin don't let them know that if you're unsatisfied, you have a complaint process. So I would love for it to be part of either our policy or AR to say that an admin will let people know exactly how to get to this process. And if people need help, that the district can provide help.
Mm-hmm.
That these things like that are where I think of as far as an equity lens would shine to show who's missing from the conversation.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
And this is something that we'll be working with our equity, whoever we hire for that work, to take a look. And we'll also have our of course, our equity and inclusion department take a look as well. So there'll be a lot of people that will be helping us get the final feedback for this when we develop the AR.
Thank you, Rob. Are there any other questions? Okay, then on to the next item for action at a future meeting, which is to consider for approval resolution 2023-05 concerning protective measures to ensure safe public meetings. Because Dr. Dye is having difficulty accessing the internet, we will pass this off to Rob.
Yeah, so this is a resolution that gives the board chair the authority to take protective measures to ensure safe meetings. So these are things that, again, this is not an action for item. This is not an action item, but we wanted to put this in front of you as something to consider to have a resolution in place, so that if we were having a meeting that was in person, that these are things that the board chair could take action to ensure the meetings run safely. So that's this. And I don't know, Maya, if there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, we've seen this a few times now, so I think we're probably pretty familiar with it. It's very much like the one we passed regarding the need to make decisions when we are recessed regarding masks, for example. Laurel, do you have a question?
I look at this now in light of recent events that happen and the conversations that are being had about the safety of board members around the nation. And I look at this and see that this is missing a lot. I would like to see this be a lot stronger of a resolution. As it's written now, it doesn't mention any of the things that I've been dealing with that make the meeting not safe for me. So racial bias, racial harassment is not here. The people being able to talk about, like I've asked several since last March for us to have a discussion on people who are at the meeting who call me out because of my skin color. And so to me, this says, this is the status quo. This is the same as it always was. And it doesn't make it right now as it stands. Racial harassment is allowed at board meetings, and it is condoned. And I do not have the right not to be racially harassed. And that's my take on it. And I'm sure there's other parts to this for other people that should be included here. This should be a bigger resolution. If we're talking about ensure public safety at meetings, it's bigger than this, because I don't have safety at meetings. And I would like to see more added to this, so everybody, not just certain board members, but everybody can be safe at a board meeting. I know other boards do this. I know it's been recommended to us, and this is one place we can start.
So, Laurel, I'm wondering if that might be two separate resolutions. This one is not the status quo, because the status quo was that we could do nothing. As you recall, when we recessed in the past, nobody had the purview to make a decision. So we deferred to the previous chief of staff to decide what to do for us, because once we were recessed, we could no longer deliberate. So this is simply to make it so that someone can make a decision. But the points that you're making are important as well, and seem as though they would be worthy of exploring and writing out in a resolution as well that is linked to this. But this simply answers the logistical question of being able to make the decision on behalf of the board.
So then I would ask that the name be changed, because then it's a resolution to make decisions at a disrupted board meeting or something. I wouldn't be the one to make that what that's called, but it is as it is. It's the title is not what it is. So if we change the title to be more specific, then I absolutely could support this.
Rob, do you feel comfortable when we bring this back to offer us some alternate titles to this resolution so that it is more closely aligned with the intention and purpose of the resolution?
Yeah, we can work on some titles.
Thank you. Gordon?
Sorry, no, I don't need to speak.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to ask questions or offer suggestions before we move on to the next item? Okay, well then, thank you, Rob. With that, we move on to the third item for action at a future meeting, which is the proposed superintendent evaluation overview and process. And Gordon will be sharing that with us.
Thanks. So this is on, it's right after the last thing we did. It starts on page 63 of the packet, which both gives the backgrounds of what we have in policy and then what the proposed process is. And so just to say, I know we're in the middle of the process of figuring out, of establishing the board goals for the year. And the goals, the superintendent's goal to be evaluated by are related to, but not the same as those, partly because when we started off talking about what do we want our board goals to be, one of the first things we said is like, well, there's all the stuff we have to do, like adopt the budget, and that's not going to be one of our goals because that's just a have to do, that's not a discretionary thing. But some of the things, obviously, there have to do things are things that we would evaluate the superintendent by. So the process that is proposed here is that the superintendent will come to the board at our next meeting on November 16th with proposed goals that will form the basis of the evaluation. And those should basically track the main goals outlined in the Vision 2020 document, which are on at the bottom of page 64. But exactly what's being done each year is a little different, but those are the areas in which we're looking for goals. So the proposed process is that at our next meeting on the 16th, superintendent will come to the board with proposed goals. The board will then approve or modify them, approve those ones or modify them some, discuss them, and hopefully get to an agreement on something that we're going to approve. And then we would also approve the timeline process that is laid out here, which culminates in towards the end of the year. We're not doing a numerical ranking kind of grading, but that all board members will give input to about the evaluation of how the superintendent did on the goals. And I should say, in addition to these goals, there's a goal of equity, which is specified in the superintendent's contract. So we'll get a goal on that as well on the 16th. And then all board members give input. The leadership compiles that, brings back a summary to the board, and that hopefully we reach consensus. If we don't reach consensus, we have majority judgment for the evaluation, and that judgment then is shared out in a public meeting by May. So that's basically what this proposal is. And if I didn't explain it clearly, we're open for questions or comments.
Did we lose Laurel, and does somebody want to text her so we know if she wants to wait for her? Rob, do you maybe want to check in with her?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah. In the meantime, does anybody have, the only thing I will add is that with gratitude to Judy Newman for creating the bulk of this last year when we were looking at the interim superintendent's evaluation. We unabashedly appreciated it and built off of that document that you shared with me, Judy. So if this looks familiar, it is what we approved last November, I want to say. So that's why it might look familiar with some slight shifts there. So it's not an unfamiliar process. So thank you, Judy.
Yeah, Laurel let me know that her computer was freezing up and is having an issue. So
is she okay with us continuing?
Yeah, I'll find out.
Okay. In the meantime, does anybody else have any questions, suggestions? It's a pretty straightforward proposal. Let's give it a minute to find out if we continue. No response yet.
Yeah, she says go ahead. Her computer's not functioning properly.
Okay. Well, in that case, that leaves us with the ending of the meeting, where we note that our next regular board meeting is November 16th. And with that, are there suggestions by the board for considerations of items at a future board meeting? Judy?
I just want to remember, we need to vote on the resolution for the OSBA priorities and principles at the next meeting. So please put that on for an item for action.
I'm sorry, Judy, yes, I have that on my list from earlier today. So it's there and we will definitely do that on the 16th. Gordon?
Maya, I lost track of where we're at with some of the investigations and if we need to have a executive session or working session or something about that on the, I hate to throw out a date that we're not already scheduled to meet. I know at one point you said set aside or Wednesday. So are there, and I know we're on some things on deadlines. I just wanted to check and make sure that we're not missing any deadlines. Is there anything that we need to do either on the 16th or on the 9th related to that stuff? You're muted, Maya.
Thank you. It's getting late. On the 16th, we might need to schedule a executive session to receive the report from the investigation. I'm not sure. I'm waiting to hear back from Judy Snyder if we will be doing that on the 16th. If not, we will do it at the first meeting in December, unless we choose to add a bonus meeting on the 30th. So we're awaiting the final results. The investigation was supposed to be completed on the 7th, and then I just received word that it will actually be completed on the 14th. So I need to just make sure that's enough turnaround time for Judy to be prepared to present to us on the 16th. So I do have that as a note. Yeah, and then we also will discuss at leadership. I believe it's Kirthi that's coming next, but I'm not positive. But we will be discussing adding a work session actually on the 30th, which is an off week, to talk about how the board might want to formalize implementing the equity lens in our decision-making process. I know that staff has been working on that with decision-making. So we might want to model ours after theirs, or we might want to go blaze a whole new pathway. Are there any other items for the meeting? Okay. Well, with that, I want to say thank you to everyone, and the meeting is adjourned at 10:10 p.m.
Thank you, Maya.
Thank you, everyone.